Hi, everybody. My name is John Bell, and this is Braven Bushcraft. So, I've started another channel, and this is a brand new channel that's going to be talking about survivalism, bushcraft skills, gear review, and prepping. And just to face some of the craziness in our world today, and to cover why these things are so important to our time and why in today's age everyone needs to become a prepper of some sort. That doesn't mean that you've got to be in some crazy cults or that you've got to go to some crazy degree, as you know, preppers always get bad names for that kind of stuff, and I wouldn't even really call myself a prepper per se. But I do think that everybody today needs to have some degree of skills in these areas. I have a background in military and law enforcement, and I've traveled around the world several times. I've been to many countries around the world. I've studied bushcraft and survival skills for many years of my life. Um, and it wasn't stuff I got in the military either. You know, people think like, they get this Rambo idea of the military. And no, it's not like that. In the military, you're doing troop movements with your rifle kind of thing, and you're trained for situations like that. But you're not trained for living off the land and stuff like that. And there are some courses that go into some of that kind of stuff, but even then, those courses aren't specifically trained for that. It's just what happens if a pilot gets downed in a how can he survive maybe in enemy territory until support can get to him or extract him, right? So but in today's age, it's super important that we have an understanding of basic things. I've traveled to England and took bushcraft core skills. Um, I've went to Sweden and took blacksmithing classes on how to make axes and knives and tools, just because I figured it was so important. And I went to Grand Force Burks, which is one of the greatest and best axe mason companies in the world, and highly recognized even amongst the bushcraft community as being either the best of the best or among the top best of the best that there are out there. So, and I love that course. At the time, I was the only American that ever was there. They even did a front page newspaper article on, this crazy American that came over here to take our class. And you know what's kind of funny about that? We had a thing above us, like this metal thing above our little kiln or fire pit where we're doing our work, and you could take chalk and write on this metal. It was just a vent, but on this face of this vent was just metal, and you could write like plans, numbers, dimensions, uh, uh, any kind of math you needed for what you were working on your project. I decided I was going to be silly, typical American, and I drew this cat with this mouse eating some cheese that was going to drop this trap down on top of the cat. And I was like, that's my design, my planning. What's funny is I was following another show, a bushcraft channel in England, and they decided they were going to go there the week after I was there and film an episode on the Grand Force Burks and the blacksmith course, right? Well, right there in the video, there's my cat and my mouse eating the cheese right there on camera. I was like, that's awesome. I was just there. So, and they came a week after me. But anyway, I digress, which I tend to do. So forgive me up front for that. Survivalism, huge importance. And for that, and for our first show today, I brought in a special guest that's been on my other channels, and people are giving me a lot of great comments about liking him and his information on the other channel. So, and by the way, my other channel is called The Harbinger Report. The Harbinger Report on YouTube. Okay, but this is Braven Bushcraft. Got to keep it straight in my head. So, um, my host here, or my guest is, or my co-host, or my guest here is going to be Sean Starry. All right, Sean Starry. I'll let him tell his background. He's got a background in the government, has a lot of firsthand experience, and he's written some books on survivalism, on home security, and he's a professional consultant for people that, or companies or corporations, I believe, that are seeking to add higher levels of security to their systems that are needed. So keep him in mind for that. And Sean, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and please give us a short bio on your background.
Sounds good. Thank you. My name is Sean Starry. I am a former I I apologize. I am a retired United States Marine Corps Special Operations and Counterintelligence Officer. It's kind of quite a mouthful. Um, I spent 4 years doing that. I was engaged in two different combat conflicts. One was in Kuwait, and one was over in Kosovo in Bosnia. After that, I spent a good 24 years in military military contracting, and a lot of that is in the security side of things. So one of the locations, or more notable locations that I worked in, is the underground dumps. And the underground dumps is basically an underground a government bunker, and a lot of people, that's what they kind of associate it as. But in the reality, it's just nothing more than an underground city. It's very big, very vast. And one of the things, key giveaways that I've learned while I was there, was that the government is actually prepping. They've been preparing for the last 15, 20 years. They've been outfitting the dumps with enough supplies for roughly about 1,500 people to start um, for the next 500, 600 years. So the fact that the government's been doing this for the last 15, 20 years was a pretty good indication that American citizens should be doing this as well.
Exactly. I lived in Colorado for a while, and you hear all the rumors about the Denver airport out there,
Mm-hmm.
and how it took, like, 5 times the cost of the original projections for building the airport, if not more. And there's all kinds of stories out there where people said that there was one couple I heard one time that said that they showed up there and the military just gave them a tour of the underground facilities. I mean, it was insane. And then I did have a buddy that worked there, and I asked him to get me any information he could. And he said it wasn't true, it wasn't blah blah blah. But man, I've heard so many counter stories to that.
Yeah.
They compartmentalize information, and now things are in the lockdown. But before, there's lots and lots of evidence from people and eyewitnesses. There was even a story about a guy who was trying to find a bathroom and wound up in the underground side of that by accident. And when he
Mm-hmm.
was there, he was like, "Oh, like crap! Like I'm not supposed to be here." He got scared and went the same way back that he came, and was worried that he would get in trouble. So. But also, I heard contractors, like, I've seen TV shows where contractors are like, "Man, we're building uh, we're building these underground bunkers," and people are like, "Why are you building so many underground bunkers?" And they said, "Well, because we're in the field, and the government, the military, they're buying up all the materials. So we figured if that's what they're doing, they have a good reason, and maybe we should be doing the same thing." So that's what we started doing, kind of thing. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it stands to reason. If they're doing it, there's a reason why. And you see, there's no time like in our world today where things are more kind of dire. I mean, in my entire lifetime, things have not been as bad as they are right now. And when I was a kid, they were still doing, nuclear bomb drills when you're in school. We had to like get under our desk, like that's going to do anything. And people
Yep.
were building like bunkers everywhere. Like it was common for people to build bunkers. I said on the other show, like even the movie Grease, where Sharon is with the guy they're in the underground bunker, and that was common then. It was very commonplace. Grandparents and stuff like that to have fallout shelters.
Yep.
But that's nothing you hear of today. And if it is, oh, these are crazy people. I mean, that's insane. It's okay if the government does it, but it's crazy if you do it. You know what I mean? How does that make sense, right? So, and yeah, there are some people I'm sure that get into prepping and stuff that they go a little bit off the loopy end or a little on the crazy end, or could be very antisocial or even cultish kind of thing. But that's not
Mm-hmm.
what we're talking about. What we're talking
Mm-hmm.
about is one of the things that made America great was the ideals of self-sufficiency. All right.
Yep.
And with that self-sufficiency, we were tough enough and smart enough that we didn't have to rely on government to do everything for us and to wipe our little behinds. All right. The idea was, like the Hank Williams country song, "A country boy can survive. We can skin a buck. We can run a trout line. A country boy can survive." You know what I mean?
Yep.
These are a lot of times in our modern society, we've lost touch of skills that our grandparents lived and survived on, like canning foods, right?
Mm-hmm.
As well as farming, or even, back in World War II, everyone had the victory garden. Remember that? Everyone had a garden. Now, if you study the times of like Jesus and their time back in the day, everyone had gardens at their house. Everybody to grow food, you
Yep.
know. So, and it used to be throughout history that was the case. I lived in Rome for a year working towards my master's degree, and I was amazed. I mean, the city's one thing, but you go right outside the city in the country, everyone grew gardens still, and everyone they raised chickens and they had their. In fact, it was really hard to find meat there in the city, like in restaurants. But if you went to the countryside, that's where they had like chicken and sausage and cheese. Like, they had a lot of stuff you wouldn't find in the city. And not only that, I ate like a complete pig there and lost 40 pounds of weight. And come back to the US, boom, right back there. I'm like, what the heck, man? What's going on? you know? But anyway, yeah, so Sean, with your perspective and your background, what are some of the things that you see as some of the greatest threats that we're facing right now, and kind of like a general overview that would be kind of writing. I like to call it the writing on the wall, if you will, like out of the Old Testament story, right?
Right.
But the writing on the wall that tells us we should be learning some basic survival skills and doing some degree of prepping. I mean, even Homeland Security has put out directives saying that all Americans should be doing some degree of prepping with storing water and food, medications, clothing, blankets, that kind of stuff. So, Sean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, here's a good one. Just today, I just saw seen it on the news where they were talking about how the U.S. National security is at all-time high risk. We're DEFCON 5. Um, excuse me, DEFCON 1. I'm sorry. We're at
Well, my understanding, if I'm correct, is DEFCON 2 because 1 is actual war, right? Is that
right.
right?
They're moving it to 1, and the reason being is because they now know that there are Hezbollah fighters within the U.S. that came through the border seeking asylum as refugees. So far, they have an intelligence sources reports has shown is somewhere around 12 million people.
Yep.
So another writing on the wall is really basic one. As we all know, um, we are um, we are seeing increased threats from our natural elements that are happening around us. We see more floods. We're seeing more, uh, hurricanes. We're seeing more tornadoes. We're seeing weather in places that we haven't had in such a long time. We're seeing places like where I live, where we're actually going to be getting into sub-zero temperatures, which is even colder than Barrow, Alaska. Okay. Another good indicative response is yes. Now, when I worked in the dumps, they've been kind of going into hyper mode where they've been stocking their shelves as fast as they can. They've been bringing in about four semi loads per day, and I haven't worked in that underground dumps in about 5 years. So, kind of give you an idea over that course of time. That's more than enough food and supplies and things that they need. Another writing on the wall is a pretty basic one. We're seeing our government eat itself from the inside out. There's a lot of political unrest going on. Um, when we look back to our forefathers, you know, for thousands and thousands of years, people have always been self-sufficient. And somewhere along the way, about 1950, that started to change. This is where they start creating conditions where they're trying to get us to be more codependent upon the government for all of our basic needs. And now that the fact that we have certain technocrats or billionaires, millionaires who are now dictating what kind of foods we should eat, how much we should eat, banning this, banning that. But the ultimate one for me is that when they start banning free speech, that's when we need to start being more self sufficient.
It's like the whole censorship thing we see going on right now, which is unprecedented and completely 100% un-American.
Yeah,
But yet you've got these corporations that control these things, and they control like the social media, and they can ban and censor anyone they want for anything. And
Absolutely.
that and they're controlling the narrative by that point. Not to mention controlling the news medias, but they're controlling the narrative, and we're seeing the attacks on free speech. Not only that, just like Sean said, we're seeing attacks, our own government eating itself, turning against each other. We see things against trying to take out your political opponents using the justice system or using the court systems like we've never seen in our entire history
Hmm.
before. And it's a travesty of justice. Whoever you're voting for, that doesn't matter. What matters is weaponizing the judicial branch or the justice system to target your political opponents. That's what third world countries do. All right. And once your country starts doing that, it's over.
Yeah.
It's over. If justice is one sided and only serving one side, then we don't have a justice system anymore.
Mhm.
You know, that's a huge point. And yeah, you brought up some big things. Just to recap what you said. So one of the major problems we have in the U.S. is our open borders. All right. Now, aside from what anyone feels as far as, oh, we're trying to be charitable to people, that's great. Look, I think one of the greatest strengths of America is the fact that we are a melting pot of
Mhm.
many cultures. I've traveled around the world to many, many cultures, many places. I love learning about other cultures. I love learning about other people and their cultures and their views. And what I've found is it doesn't matter what country you're in. Um, Basic people have the basic same desires, and most people want peace and they want what's best for their people and for the future of their children. You
Yeah.
know, so and I love Mexico. I love Mexicans. I got many friends that are Mexican or from there as well. I've been there several times myself. Love it. I love their culture. Love their food. Um, but that said, right now with the open border situation, this first and fundamental, this is illegal. It's
Mhm.
illegal. I'm for legal immigration. And we used to have a process for legal immigration. The problem is what people don't understand today is our charity, all right, our willingness to be a melting pot has been weaponized against us. And this is what you call modern warfare.
Yep.
It's modern warfare is not a video game. Modern warfare is you take over countries without standing armies. You take them over from within. You take
Mhm.
them over by flooding their borders, by paying who gets elected to by like George Soros. It should be illegal in our country for George Soros to fund any DAs, any judges, any prosecutors, or any political establishment. Those interests, his interests, do not align with America or freedom, and neither do the ones that are getting elected by him. So
Mhm.
that should be illegal. That should be a stop. Should be done to that, or his son now that's taken over for him. Ronald Reagan said, if you can't control if a nation can't control its borders, it's not a nation.
Mhm.
It's not. You don't have anything left to say. It's a destruction of your country. And it's just like, say you have a sinking ship and you've got rescue boats, right? Well, you're trying to get everybody in those life raft rescue boats to get away from the sinking ship before it sinks. Of course, the problem is if there's too many people trying to get in one boat, the whole boat sinks. It can only handle so many at a time. I lived in Los Angeles, and when I was there, and this was years ago, 9 hospitals shut down because they went bankrupt trying to take care of illegal aliens, illegal immigrants. So that means there's 9 hospitals paid for by the citizens, the people, and they no longer have health care at 9 of those hospitals because the system was overrun and overloaded and couldn't handle it. Now that was then. Imagine things going on today. So and here's another thing. Here's another concept people don't understand. I just got back from visiting a friend of mine in Vancouver, Canada. And that was a culture shock, not because of Canadians. It was a culture shock because the only thing I didn't see in Canada was any Canadians. It's all Muslims, East Indians, and Chinese. They run all the Canadians out. In the cities, the Canadians are gone. They've left the cities. My friend was walking me down his old subdivision and was crying, tears coming out of his face as he was explaining, these immigrants ran off all the local citizens, ran them out. He was the last one in that neighborhood. And he was telling me how much they were ganging up against him, how they were threatening him. And finally, he had to leave too and get a more expensive place somewhere else. That's more difficult for him to afford. And those places are super highly inflated, partially because of the immigration. You have all these Chinese millionaires coming in, buying up all the infrastructure and assets, and it's making the value and the price go up to. So again, citizens can't even afford a job to stay to have a place to live anymore. So that is what's called weaponized replacement migration.
Yep.
If you actually listen to the leaders, they say we want to do away with whites and Christianity. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to bring in all these other races and just breed them, force them out and breed them out till we get rid of all white people and all Christianity. That is racist. I mean, there's no other word for it. And if people who identify as, I've struggled with racism, different cultures, they should be the first to champion, hey, we're not going to treat other races as racist, because we understand that what that's like. It's you're no different than anybody else if you're just like, oh, now it's my turn and I'm gonna get you kind of thing. Get rid of those white people. That's not American. It's racism. And if you look at the UN's own website, they have a page dedicated to. I should have posted this up. They have a page dedicated to replacement migration. So the UN is saying straight out, they're using the excuse of war and immigrants to flood Western nations with immigrants to the point that we can change the demographics forever in those countries. And so it's a takeover. It's an ethnic cleansing is what it is. Ethnic cleansing. So it's going to end up getting violent and lead to genocide. No doubt. I mean, that's what they're ultimately preparing for, So again, I'm for all races in all countries, but I'm for it in a legal and an appropriate manner to where we're not. We have a duty to our citizens as well. And right now, more and more, you see citizens and citizens' rights being ignored for the sake of the immigrants and the immigration, and that's just wrong. No matter how you cut it, no matter how you design it, that's wrong. And it's for the purpose to destroy our country. In fact, yesterday, it was headlined in the news that a congresswoman who was saying, we need more immigrants in my district so that I can win the next election. Really? You see what I'm saying? That goes against Americanism and the ideals that our country stood for. So, yes. Also, with some of these people, and also very important, since I'm already blown on this topic, is many of the people coming across our border are not Mexicans, but are Muslims or Chinese or Indians. Many Muslims, all right? Right here in my neighbor and close to the city next to me, we have quietly on the down low an immigration camp of over 300 Muslims. And now when you go to the mall, you see hijabs and Muslims everywhere, all right? And unfortunately, they're causing a lot of crime. Like one was arrested for beating a woman with a crowbar.
Mm-hmm.
Now, check this out. When I know about this, not many locals do, because my buddy, and I'll try to bring him on at some point to talk about this, but my buddy ran security. His job was to help him and his wife are running security for this migrant center. And he said that he found something very disturbing. When this man was arrested for beating the woman with the crowbar, he had to go in his apartment and get all of his stuff together because they were going to give it the space to another immigrant. But he found that this guy had stuff like, if I remember correctly, stuff like body armor and strange things. I thought he had said weapons the first time, but I asked him again and he didn't say that. But I almost swear he had said that the first time. But anyway, he also said he found an ID card, all right, that identified that man as a UN soldier, all right? That's very disturbing. Now, second to that, many of the immigrants that we have coming across our border right now, it's been reported several times, many are carrying ID cards that identify them as UN soldiers. soldiers. All right. Those soldiers are going to be armed and they are going to be used against the American people. Remember the whole defund the police? All right. Remember, hey, we got to kick out anyone in the military that won't, abide by new rules that go against the Geneva Convention. All right. Um, and now the military is saying we've got a crisis. We've got no manpower, and many police departments are saying that too. Well, that's okay because California and I believe Illinois just started saying we're going to start hiring illegals to be police officers and police our citizens. You think that's a coincidence? You see what I'm saying? No, this is not by coincidence. It's by design. And Halliburton awarded contracts under a program called Rex 84. This was after 9/11. Rex 84. Halliburton awarded contracts to build 800 concentration camps across the United States, one for every major city. And I won't go into detail right now some of the horrific things there that's straight out of World War II concentration camps, like crematoriums or guillotines. All right, made by Chanel, the perfume company. Look it up. So I remember listening to a female truck driver, and her job was bringing payloads to this place until she realized what her payload was. She was bringing in frozen cadavers, human bodies, to test out the effectiveness of how good their crematoriums were. Man, that's straight out of World War II stuff right there, you know? And the government said, oh, we're building this for illegal aliens. Yeah, right. It's not for illegal aliens. It's for the Great Reset or the Build Back Better, you know? That's what it's for. It's for the cleansing, the great culling of the masses, you know, like the Georgia Guidestone saying we have to reduce the world's population to like this much. You know what I mean? The useless eaters, right? So of these people coming across the border, another thing they've been finding, especially recently, is IEDs, improvised explosive devices. And you know what? They don't even arrest the people or deport them that they found. They just say, oh, I'm sorry. Your IED, improvised explosive device, is not a carry-on item. We're going to have to confiscate this. And here's a flyer and some free money. You may now enter the country. Really? Really? I know when I was in my unit back in the day, they briefed us on 12 missing suitcase-sized nukes. Suitcase-sized nukes, 12 of them. The government said, we don't know where they are. And there's a strong possibility that they might be sitting here, you know, some of them, at least, you know. That was a threat back in the day when I was in my unit. We were briefed on that. So the border situation is a major, major problem, not to mention gang violence. This last week, they said that illegal aliens were forming gangs that were raiding houses. And Elon Musk came out saying something about that recently, saying that this is going to destroy our country. You know, I don't have the exact quote, so I don't want to say too much about it, but you can look it up. Look at Elon Musk talking about the danger of illegal immigration right now. So, yeah, things are really bad. And if we don't put a stop to that, that is the writing on the wall. Our country will not survive this if we don't stop it. You can't have 300,000 people coming across the border in a day and that going on to millions and millions of people and not change. I mean, we've had more people come in than are the demographics of some states, you know, and they're going everywhere. They interview these people, not to mention the child trafficking and stuff that goes on along with that stuff, or human trafficking. I mean, look at the movie Sound of Freedom. I hope everyone here is going to see that. I know the guy who created that, and he's Eduardo Verastegui. He's a very good person, and I'm very honored to know him. And he always edifies me when I'm around him, and he's always correct. And he's actually running for president of Mexico in 2024. So pray for that. I try to warn him though, man, if you try to change too much, you're going to have agencies that are targeting you and coming after you. He doesn't like to hear that. But I want him I want him to know, eyes wide open, what he's getting himself into. I've tried to warn him, and it's because I care about him, and I hope to God maybe I'm wrong, which I'm not, but I wish to God I was on that. But um, sometimes though we have to do our job not because we're going to win or be successful, but just doggone it because it's the right thing to do, whether we win or not. It's sometimes we just got to stand up for what's right. That's part of American idealism. All right. But going into some of the other things you said too, natural disasters,
Mhm.
earthquakes are on the rise. We're going through new solar cycles with our sun that we haven't seen pretty much in our lifetime, or haven't seen since, like, the 1800s kind of thing. And something people have to understand, it's not all the whole climate change thing. Our sun goes through normal cycles of heating up, cooling down, becoming more active and less active. It's completely 100% natural and has absolutely nothing to do with anything humans are doing on planet Earth.
Exactly. It's just think of it like in the terms of a reptile. The reptiles, they shed their skins every so often, or every season. So the Earth is going to go through it's going to go through a shedding phase, and it's going to have a regrowing phase, and that's just a part of what Mother Earth is all about. They try to do away with that education in the school systems. That's why there's all that mass confusion. Why is this happening? Why
They're
is that
rewriting education. The textbooks of today are not teaching what we studied when we were in school. They're rewriting education, and they're doing it with a political end and agenda. That's wrong.
Yep. So they can put in this climate change. Well, climate change is pretty broad. It's kind of like saying, let's put a big band-aid over, this,
It's a catch-all.
several, yeah, so many different whatever's going on out there that we.
Well, remember, it's changed already. They already had to change the narrative. It was global warming,
Yes.
and that didn't work. So now they've had to switch that to climate change, which now it can be anything.
Mhm. Well, back in the
It,
70s, didn't they remember they said that we were going to enter a new ice age?
that was what I was going to say next.
Yeah.
They in the 70s, I remember in the 70s, they came out all the time in the news and had experts on, blah 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 blah, talking about we're getting ready to enter an ice age, and that never happened. What about Al Gore's what was his movie called? I forget. That drunk of trash saying that we'd all be dead by now and all be flooded. Really? Never happened. No one ever says that. Oh, hey, they were actually wrong multiple times in the past. So maybe now it's possibility that what they're saying isn't right. You
I
know?
think I like to think of people like Al Gore in this context. So the experts, they built the Titanic and it sunk. Okay. Um, you had somebody like Noah who had never built anything out of wood in his entire life. God gives him the instruction plans on how to build an ark, and the ark survived with everybody and everything in it.
To this day,
So,
the ark is still there.
and he was an amateur, so when people start looking towards the amateurs and start seeking, what they know, what they're doing, and what they're trying to accomplish, and they're not grandstanding. The experts grandstand. The amateurs don't grandstand. They'll show you the process and what they're doing, and what they're creating, or what they're trying to accomplish. But it's always the expert that will grandstand, and those will always fail every time.
When I lived in Colorado, I remember watching a show where it was all these scientists on this talk show, and they said, "Listen, we none of us agree with this whole global warming or climate change thing, but we are not getting funded and paid to say that. Whereas all of our colleagues that are out grandstanding, they're all being paid large amounts of money to say that, you
Mhm.
know? Whereas these scientists said, we completely disagree, but we're not taking the money,
Yep.
to control the narrative. You see what I'm saying? And it's all about control. It's all about, oh, because of this, now you got to pay more taxes. Oh, because of this, you can only have limited resources. Because of this, you can't turn your thermostat up. Oh, because of this, you can't have your electricity on all the time. Oh, your carbon footprint is too high.
Mhm.
I mean, It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Then you have people flying over here like the Queen of England when she was alive saying, "Oh, I paid my carbon footprint for flying over here on the plane." Oh yeah, they can have mansions, they can have multiple planes, but and their carbon footprint's a whole lot bigger, but it's okay because they paid for it. Well, who are you paying for that? Did you pay the sun? Did you pay the solar system? Did you pay the earth? Or is it just a political tool for control? Boom. Drop the mic. So yeah, that's another point. Going also back to what you said, the bunkers. Again, just this week in the news, again, Mark Zuckerberg building an underground bunker. You brought this up on our last show. Mark Zuckerberg building underground bunkers. Man, when the richest billionaires are building underground bunkers, they're doing it for a reason. These people don't. I don't know how many like. I grew up being friends. My dad was friends with Al Copeland, who started Popeye's Fried Chicken. Right. I go to a restaurant with and I've got total respect for Al and the family and Al Jr. who runs it now. But I went to dinner one night with Al Copeland and we were in this little Italian restaurant and he looks at the menu and there's a price for a bottle of wine. Well, Al doesn't like the price, so he tells the owner of the restaurant he's only going to pay so much for that bottle of wine. And I'm thinking to myself, even as a kid, I'm thinking to myself, that's weird. This man's like a multi-millionaire. Why is he going to argue the price of a bottle of wine? When you when you when you hang around like really rich people, they're the biggest money pinching people you will ever meet because they know the more money they have that because they don't spend money or very cautiously or carefully kind of thing. So when these people are spending billions to build out these underground bunkers, there is a very big reason why. And that is something that should raise a little red flag and make the hair on the back of your neck stand up for everybody else who is paying attention. And for those who aren't paying attention, you better doggone start paying attention and listen to the people who are trying to ring your bell to get the attention. Hey, Bell, I'm John Bell. I'm ringing the bell. So yeah, and so you've got also another important thing as far as survival is, and doing some degree of prepping is when any kind of catastrophe happens. And I was telling Sean about this before the show. I always like saying you pick your card. You know, is it a nuclear bombs going off? Is it a civil war in the country? Is it we're being invaded, which we're being invaded right now? All right. You pick any catastrophe you want. Oh, our power grid gets shut down because of a cyber attack. Oh, our power gets shut down because of a solar flare. I mean, you pick any disaster. Oh, natural events took off. We had a polar shift. You know what I mean? Pick any of your disaster you want. When the time comes, and it seems like that's sooner rather than later, if you follow what the big wigs are doing and what they're saying, you pay attention. When that comes, you want to be able to be somewhat self sufficient and you want to be able to have some resources on hand for you and your family so that you don't fall into the trap of having to go rely on the government for a handout or supplies or to FEMA camps. All right. Hear what I'm saying. Or to Walmarts. Hear what I'm saying.
Because what they're going to do is they're going to they're going to cut off your food supply. Eventually, that's what's going to happen. They're going to cut off that food supply. And then when you got your FEMA camps up and running, right about that same time, people start running out of food. What's the first place they're going to do? FEMA camps are going to start running the psyops. Say, hey, you know, come to us. We'll feed you. We'll give you shelter. We'll give you what you need. But the problem is, once you go in, you never come back out.
That's it.
And it's all more of an entrapment. So, you know, so that's why it's important. I believe that every family should have at least 1 year worth of food supply for every individual in the household. Okay. And during that meantime, you should also be acquiring all the means to have resources to build your own water or fix your own house, whatever materials that you need and the tools. And then on top of that, you should be building up your library of DIY, know how to fix or how to build.
What happens when the internet stops working and you can't get access to it? What are you going to do?
That's a good question. And that, my answer to that is pretty much ham radios, because there's really no way to regulate ham radios once the civilization breaks down. So whereas
I'm
the laws are
actually I'm actually bringing on a guest who's more of an expert than I am in ham radios to talk about that specific topic.
so ham radios right now, if you want to get into ham radios, that's fine. The law states that there's 3 levels, and on any one of those 3 levels, you have to have a license. Okay, um, which is fine. You can go take the classes, the courses, read the books, and take your tests, whatever
It's
you
not
want.
hard. I studied for a weekend and passed the first level. And
But
I only missed one question.
go ahead.
I said I studied for one weekend and I
Mhm.
got the first level passed and only missed one question.
Yeah, yeah.
Now
So
I'm actually trying to go back and get my second level.
my recommendation is just taking the first level, the journeyman entry. The more other classes, they're more focused on the actual registry of the individual. It's not if you can learn the basics on how to communicate through a ham radio, even if you don't know how to operate a ham radio, it's a good idea to get a book that explains on how to operate ham radios.
You need books for everything. We'll be covering that in later shows
Yeah.
because you won't have the internet as a reference point. So you're going to need books on first aid, books on farming, books on health. I mean, all kinds of stuff, and books for technical stuff like this,
Yeah.
and books on survival skills.
And
Like,
if you don't want to get into ham radios, that's fine. My other suggestion is CB radios, and CB radios stands for Citizen Broadcast. You do not need a license for that. However, with the CB radios, it can cover up to a range of about 30 to 60 miles, whereas your um, ham radios can cover up a greater distance, especially with the repeaters on them. You can cover on a good day. You can cover up to about 1,500 miles. So
I've used CBs and I've never had one go beyond like 3 miles max, and that's
yeah.
line of sight. Well, but it's good to fall back on because, like you said, they're cheaper. Still, a lot of people have them. They really got big in the crazy after the movie Smokey and the Bandit. Which, by the way, because I'm a movie freak, worked in Hollywood, and just wrote a movie that I'm trying to sell now. The Smokey and the Bandit came out on the same weekend as Star Wars.
Mhm.
But yeah, that started a huge craze across the country. Truckers still regularly use CB, although most people that do use types of communications like that are now switching to the ham radios or GMRS. GMRS is like a CB on steroids. It's an in between the kind of the low frequency bands and the ham radio stuff. But yeah, Sean's right to talk about bringing up the using. It's good for everybody to get ham radios, whether you have a license or not, because of several reasons. One is in an emergency, anyone's allowed to broadcast on it if it's a legitimate emergency. Otherwise, you're going to be paying legitimate giant fines. So be careful with that. Be careful with your kids getting a hold of them, etc. That said, anyone can use them in an emergency. And there are times where you can get help that you wouldn't get with a cell phone, with a satellite phone, or any other way. So that's huge to have. Secondly, something that Sean is very familiar with, as well as myself from our background, our military backgrounds, intelligence is key to survival.
Mhm.
If you're in any type of grid down situation, again, pick your card, right? Whatever one you want. I mean, we only have like 200 we're facing. But in any kind of grid down situation, that's a Bofang, right? It was a
No, that's
52
agreeable. It's
gauge,
agreeable. UB5R.
right? So in any grid down situation, if your television's not working and your internet's down, then radio is going to be your only source of news and information.
Mhm.
And ham radios are the best for that because you can get news directly from other people. So it's not going through propaganda controls, which you always have to be careful of. But it's your source of local intelligence and information on what's going on, and for national or worldwide. So that makes it hugely, immensely important to have some kind of connection to that, even if you never transmit on it. At least
Mhm.
you can monitor those things. And it also gives you intelligence of what's going on in your local area, which can also save your life. All right, better or for worse. So it's hugely important. I recommend everybody, and you can buy one like Sean just picked up on Amazon. You can buy these things for like 20, $30. All
Yep.
right. Now they do take from a little bit of programming, a little bit of knowledge. Like most things in the survival world, it takes a little bit of skill that you've got to learn to master. But it just takes a little bit of effort. It's not overly complicated.
No.
It can be overly complicated, but most times it's not overly complicated. It just takes a little bit of effort, and you can learn to get proficient. Like Sean said, one of the best ways, get a little how-to book on operating that radio. And try to, another thing I always say is try to get in these things as hobbies,
Yeah.
because that way when an emergency comes down, that's not the time you want to try to be figuring out how to make all this stuff work. You need to have some degree of proficiency. So the best way to do that is make it fun. Do a little bit at a time. Get into a hobby. See if you can make a connection with it, or even to other people in it,
Yeah.
and make it fun. Make it fun. And do that for the family. Hey, we're going on a camping trip and we're gonna do this. We're gonna connect this radio and we're gonna talk to the other side of the country, and or around the world, and see what we can get. Now, to what you were saying on the licensing, I've got the first level license, and I just realized recently, I didn't know this. That's pretty much just for being able to broadcast locally. You have to have the second level license in order to broadcast international, or across the U.S., national or international.
Right.
So therefore, that's why I want to get my second license now, so that I can start practicing and communicating with high frequency, and talking across country and around the world. If the weather conditions are right, you can even talk to the space station, which is amazing. There's actually, you want to look up on YouTube people who are using ham radios to connect with the space station. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I did that for a hobby for a while. Just every so now and then, I know when the space station. I can track. You can go online. You can actually track where the space station is going to be.
There's programs, yeah.
Yeah, so it's usually right around about 11:15 p.m. That's when they're kind of right above me. So usually about 11 o'clock to about 11:30. That's kind of when I'm in sort of in range with them. And you can ask them questions, or whatever. I usually call off. I get my call sign, and I say, "Hey, it's me, Mr. Starry Night," and they know who I am, and they're like, "Oh, it's this guy," and then we start, talking. I say, "Hey, I got a question for you, um, you know, about this or whatever. I said, you can tell me, that's fine. If not, that's okay. I'm sure you guys have some stuff that's kept secret." But I said, I've been kind of, looking around, experimenting with the idea about trying to create some form of way of creating a generator that doesn't take any fuel or whatever. And every now and then, they give you kind of little, maybe a little hints here or there, what they know or whatever. Or sometimes they may not, they may talk about something else, One time we were actually playing a game of chess. Okay. We have a chess board, and I'm playing the chess with them up there. And so we would call out the moves, and I got 30 minutes to do this. So, and if we don't finish the game, that's fine. Tomorrow night, 11, we'll pick it up again. Once I get them on the radio, I'll play a game of chess, finish it out, Sometimes we'll play like checkers or something that they can relatively play. They can play from memory, so to speak. They don't have to actually have the game pieces, because usually, you get a piece of paper with the grids and graphs or whatever, and we could just, play through.
I know people that are chess players that they don't even need a board. They can do the whole play you just in their head, which is scary.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's amazing.
When my brother and I were little, we used to have walkie-talkies, and we were always so concerned about one or the other cheating, because we used to play Battleship, and we look around and see what the pieces were or whatever were cheating. So we came up with this concept that said, okay, we're going to play radio battleship. So you go to one end of the house, I'll go to the other end of the house. We don't know which room we're in, but the whole game is going to be done through a radio. And that's how I didn't realize it, but that's actually my introduction into military intelligence. That's kind of a lot of shit that they do. Well, and with the International Space Station, I told them about that. And they said, hey, they said, do you want to play Battleship? I was like, yeah, let's play Battleship. I went and got my Battleship game, popped it out. And I said, okay, you got your pieces in where you want them? Yep. Okay. And then I said, okay, you go ahead and shoot first. And then we go back and forth and 5-minute game, and usually they end up winning. So, but it's all fun and games. It's good. It's a good exercise. It's a good hobby to get into, just like anything. Like this summer, I'm going to start a gardening club, right, in my own neighborhood. I'm going to get as many people involved as I can to say, hey, listen, I've got starter seed packets for all of you. This is how a little piece of paper shows you how far apart it's got to be spaced. So it's a really good idea to get into different productive hobbies, things that you can produce.
Take survival skills and turn them into fun hobbies for you, your family, your community.
Exactly. And your kids are going to look at it like, hey, mom and dad's going off crazy again with their survival crap. No, is mom and dad's actually, making stuff, they're growing stuff, they're doing stuff, and they make a game out of it, and the kids are having a good time.
I don't have children, but if I did, they would have school, and then they would have my school, and my school would be learning all this stuff. But part of their chores would be they have to grow a garden, and so that they can learn how to do it, and so that they can see the rewards and fruit of that, literally fruit of that, and they can get the rewards from that. I was in a community a couple years ago where we grew a garden because of me telling them the importance of it, and I did a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation about how important it was for people to grow a garden, and then we grew an acre garden. And it was not difficult, was not hard. And then at the end of it, we harvest everything and we canned. We had some older people showing us how to can. I've never done that before. We canned all the food, we prepped it, and canned it, took some effort and some time. But it was amazing. We spent the entire winter eating that canned food, and it was fantastic. It really was like, but not only that, the sense of accomplishment that you have when you realize you made this, you produced this. It gives you just this really sense of accomplishment.
And hey, I created fire,
Yeah, right. Yeah. So that's absolutely amazing. Yeah. So, but
that's the thing. It's all there's a lot of wonderful people out there. There's a lot of wonderful people who are into this already. I found tons of people on TikTok just alone, just on the whole canning feature, and I've learned a few little hacks along the way, little shortcuts, but it's not really shortcut, but it's an easier way to do certain things, and I would share that information with amongst the people on the canning side of things. And I would say, hey, listen, I want to encourage you to just try this, this is what I've been doing for the last 10, 15 years. Really enjoy it. My house is not 110 degrees inside during the summer when I'm trying to can my stuff. But if I do use the pressure cooker, I do it outside. I do it, instead of in the house. And here's the reason why. And also, I'm converting that energy to other things, which I'm not wasting anything. So I share a lot of ideas with them, stuff that I've tried, stuff that I've done, and that's piqued their interest. And that's what I love about one good thing about the internet. There's a lot of resources out there you can grab onto, that folks that are already doing it, or you go to certain sites like wikiehau.com, and they have tons of stuff on there as well. These are all I call amateurs who have been trying to put these things into practice for probably their whole lives, if not maybe at least for 2 or 5 years or whatever. So they understand what works for them or what doesn't work for them. And they have some good ideas to share. And those are the kind of people I tend to gravitate around, because we get rid of the concept that everybody, or this person such is an expert. But we can say, hey, this person's been doing this for a couple of years. That's far more attractive. And these are the people I gravitate to. Say, how did you do this? Yeah, and let them share. And the more we get into this mindset, and we start coming across more book materials on how DIY, how to do this or how to do that. In the long run, this is how society used to be back then. This was before they came out with the actual terminology of experts. The word experts didn't come out until 1920, and that was when Rockefeller started establishing himself within our U.S. government.
They started establishing accreditation methods, like even in our school system, so then they can control who has the license and ability to speak. And if you start speaking outside that control, you lose your credibility or the respect of your peers, or fired from your job. Like doctors. Doctors are not allowed to be self-thinkers. If they start going outside of what they're trained to do and say, they lose their license and get kicked out.
Exactly. And I've worked as a military contractor, providing security, different levels of security for different places. And there is so much about, for example, like home security, that this is so much information that people don't know, they don't have access to. And you can scour the internet all you want, you're not going to find it. But those who actually have worked in the security industry for, I would say, more than 5 years, they understand the basic principles of any type of building security. Doesn't matter what kind of a building it is. But it's first one is prevention, second one is deterring, third one is defense. A lot of what I have used those 3 basic primary principles in everything that I've ever done. And I apply that into my own home as well. And I've spent a lot of time, a lot of money. When I first started up my own consultation business as a side job, I was catering to the elites, Fortune 500 CEOs, Hollywood stars, the athletics, the NBA, NFL, you name it. All the people that are of high wealth. What I came to realize by 2020 was that there's just a small handful of them, is usually the females, that are highly appreciative of what advice you've given them, and you get paid for doing this. They're very appreciative, but for the general, I would say for the general population of the wealthiest people, they don't care, because they feel confident and secure that they've got teams of armed security around them at all times. What they don't realize is that those armed security are just people, and they do have human error. And my job is to look at things from a criminal perspective and find the holes within their security. And then I advise them how to patch that up, how to keep their security as fluid as possible, so that they need to make changes where to look for them, So it's about me teaching them how to do their security. So that in the long run, that they are ultimately responsible for their own security at all times. But the problem is the knowledge has been lost. And so that's why I had gone on to write a book called The Ultimate Home Security, to actually teach people the basic knowledge of it, so people can get back into securing their own homes. Which is why I shifted gears in 2020. Instead of doing the rich and the elites, I decided to start focusing on is residents of all ages around America. It doesn't matter what kind of home you have. I'm going to teach you how to do your own building security. I'll craft a plan, tailor a plan based on 20 questions you fill out and send me, and I'll give you the rundown. I'll show you what type of crimes in your neighborhood, what to look for, and how to secure your home, and some behavioral methods, behaviors that you're gonna have to look out for to change. So you can focus on prevention, because prevention is the key to everything. But however, when prevention fails, deterring comes in. If deterring fails, and then we're going to get into the whole defense thing. And I've got training videos for all 3 of them I send to all of my customers. And my whole aim is to educate as many people as possible and along on this venture. So generations from now, this would be a common knowledge, there won't be any more security consultants because there'll be so many people out there will know exactly what to do and how to take care of their families and their children. So
Yeah, that's great. One thing I wanted to say is, when you're talking about doing your community with growing the gardens and everything, one thing I always try to stress to people is make sure you're not buying like local seeds, but buy specifically heirloom seeds from trusted organic companies, because heirloom seeds are the only real seeds, and they're getting fewer and fewer and far between now. And Because most seeds you buy at local stores or even nurseries, those are all going to be GMO seeds built by big pharma and corporations like that. And those seeds, first of all, are full of pesticides. All right. They're genetically programmed with pesticides that you are going to ingest in your body and will affect your body. But
yeah.
a second to that, they're also made that they don't grow seeds that you can regrow from, at least not in a practical manner. So only organic heirloom seeds from a trusted source. And
Mm-hmm.
there are companies you can find online, especially to do this. Those are real seeds. And what's great about those seeds is you'll learn in your garden that you can always save a portion of your produce to recover the seeds, and then you can regrow next year's harvest from that. Yeah, you store them in bell jars, just like this, right? Masonry bell jars. Um, so that's a very important thing to think about whenever you start your gardening. I won't plant anything that's not heirloom seed. And most people I know, even growing gardens around here, they're running the local nurseries or they're going to Walmart, uh, which I call China Mart. But um, you know, so that's not healthy, and it's not something that you can reproduce. And that's the whole reason why they do it. They want you buying seeds from them every year, not regrowing your own like our grandparents used to do. All right. So that's one thing. Another thing is you talk about the books again, to reiterate that right now, why we have almost free access to the internet, you need to be stockpiling, make a list of books that you need for survival situations. Think about what happens if there's a grid down situation and you don't have power and you don't have a way to go on the internet to look up something, even if you've got to perform an emergency surgery. It happens. I
Yep.
mean, think about um, the British Navy. You get wounded in battle. They have one doctor on board, maybe an assistant, and he's literally looking at a book on the anatomy while he's cutting on you. All right, and there may be situations where that's the only choice you have to try to save someone's life. You get shrapnel in you. You got to pull that shrapnel out. You gotta try to stop bleeding of organs and stuff. That sounds horrific and terrifying, but you know what? When you can't get help anywhere else, what are you going to do? And you might not save everybody, but you might be able to save somebody with a little bit of practical knowledge. um, and books are phenomenal for that. People don't know how to garden anymore. You need books on gardening. It's not something you can just make up as you go. Not everyone has a green thumb.
Right.
So um, so that's key things: communication, safety, anything as far as skills, repairing stuff, all that kind of stuff. Those are things you need to make lists of books for. And you either need to try to start um, uh, scheduling your budget to try to acquire some of these a little bit at a time, or get started with a foundational base amount in different areas to get you started. Or there are plenty of free books you can download online. You can
Yep.
take resources, and as long as you've got a printer and very expensive printer ink, you can print out books and use binders,
Yep.
and label the binders, and build a library. You can
One of
do
the
this.
one of the things I've done is I've utilized the ebooks. So I've got quite a few ebooks, but I've also got a lot of books that I've bought. I would go to a local library or a local bookstore, and a lot of times what I'm looking for is I'm looking for like popular mechanic books, right? I'm looking for books that you know I'm going to call it it predates the censorship of the government
Mm.
control. So, which is probably prior to like 1950 and on back, because a lot of those books that were produced that came out from the Great Depression, they're going to have a lot of good usable information in there, even how to take just two or not three ingredients for things that you can find and resource very easily to make your food, or how to use a pulley system, right? That's something that's not taught in schools anymore. How you can use a pulley system to be able to move heavy things. Just whatever I could get my hands on. But what I would do with the ebooks is I would get the ebooks on my phone, and I would utilize the screenshot method, and I would just screen shoot it, and then I would just turn around and print them out, and I'd laminate each page because I want to preserve it for as long as I possibly can. I just put them in a binder and I mark the binder. This is what this book is for. So if I need a reference point to go back to, or if it's something I don't know how to do later down the road, hey, I got to put in a well, I've got all the information. I can go, okay, here it is. However, though, that being said, if I do have some kind of a solar panel generator, at least I could be able to, charge up my computer, my battery on my laptop. I have about close to 300 USBs where I have videos that I got from YouTube or TikTok or whatever, and I would take those videos, I put them on my USB cards, and so or flash drives, as they call them, and each flash drive is labeled number one, and I got a little a diary book, a leather diary that I would write, okay, flash drive one, and this is what the titles for each one, what they are, and I kind of give it maybe just a sentence of what it is, and so if I want to go back and look up something and say, well, I remember seeing, how to put a well in, and they did a sandpoint well. Well, I just can't remember. I got all the parts, right? And so I just don't know how to put it together. And so I go back and stick that into my laptop, and I can watch the video, and I can go, okay, taking notes and write stuff down. Okay, he did this. Okay. And then this is how kind of a general idea how deep we need to go. Okay. And what and what mistakes to avoid. That's the big one. What the mistakes to avoid. And then when I go out there and do it myself, I'll be more successful because I have a reference guide to go by. And when the grid is down, especially if there is no more electricity, the books you got in your hand, you can take it and put it in your bug out bags. And if you need to bug out and you go to your next permanent location, you've got your book with you and go, okay,
Like
all right, I know what to do.
books on first aid and books on foraging food. Super important.
Yeah.
You've got to have resources on that, and to identify fakes, like fake false plants that are actually poisonous that you might think are. Remember the kid in Alaska uh, who uh, who died in that bus, right? He was trying to live off the land, and what happened? He was reading a book on self reliance and foraging food, but he got something that was a fake food, an
Hmm.
imposter, and he thought the book said it was okay. He ate it. Christopher McCandless, Into the Wild. He he ate these seeds thinking that the book said they were okay, and it was a fake of something else that was poisonous that's similar. Is when I
Yep.
say fake, it's similar to something that is edible. He misunderstood that and he died from what he ate.
And that's why I came up with the Survivor's Bible, and in Survivor's Bible, it's got every single edible plant that's out there, and it's even got some plants in there as well. It explains to you the basics uh, parts of each plant. Now, some plants you're going to get into where you can eat it, but you have to either boil it or you have to cook it, right? And you have to cook the acids off.
They're like acorns, aren't they? Don't you have to like cook cook them several times before they're not poisonous or something?
Right. And so all you'll have. not just the pictures, but you'll have all of the information that will tell you what parts are safe to eat, what parts are not safe to eat, what it's used for. But it's gonna give you all of the accurate information that you need about it. As I put the Survivor's Bible together as sort of a reference, a point of reference guide. So if you want to learn what's bugging in, what's bugging out, how those two go hand in hand together. Um, we're going to get into like basic mechanics. We're going to get into gardens or the different types of gardens. All of that information is in there. It is sort of like a beginning reference point, but it also helps you make good decisions along the way. You can expand off of that book by reaching out to and finding specific books about that specific type of gardening. But this is kind of a way for people to have at least a starting reference point if they don't know where to start. And that's what the book is designed for. But it's a military survival manual designed for civilians.
And give us the name again.
It's called the Survivor's Bible.
By any chance, do you have it on Amazon?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. However, Amazon is kind of shadow banning it. So if you go to Google in the search bar, put Survivor's Bible in there. And once it pops up, scroll down just a little bit, the very first one, and that'll take you right to the book.
Okay, good. Yeah, and I'll try to put a link in the show afterwards too, where people could connect to it and see that, and to your consultant. So that's great. Yeah, it was funny. You made me think. There was this kid on TikTok that did this video, and he's like, "Man, I graduated the top of my class in school, and what I learned when I got out of school is I don't know anything. They didn't teach us nothing." And he's like, "They didn't teach us anything. They didn't teach us like anything that we need to know." He's like, "They didn't teach us how to balance a checkbook. They didn't teach us how to survive in society or start a business. They didn't teach us financing and how to run your finances. I mean, they didn't." He's like, "I don't have any practical. I have no preparedness for the real world." It's like, and I was top of my class. So he's like, "What is all this trash they're teaching us?" You know what I mean? And like, that's the point. That's the whole point. Look at the whole Common Core, which is common crap, is what it is. You take real math that's worked for centuries, and now we're going to muck it all up and say, "How does it make you feel?" I told my teacher, it's going to make me feel real upset when I get an F on this test because I don't understand what this trash is saying. You know what I mean? I mean, let's go back to 2 + 2 = 4. How hard is that? You know what I'm saying? Then I went back and took another algebra course that had regular old school algebra, and I made an A. I went from an F to an A. I mean, how does that even make sense? Another thing you said was, are you familiar with Dick Marchenko with SEAL Team 6?
Yeah.
So Dick Marchenko, he wrote his book. Was it the Warrior, or I think it was called The Warrior. I know it's been a long time, but anyway, Dick Marchenko, who is the man accredited with founding SEAL Team 6, which is the SEALs anti-terrorist section. It's like kind of the best of the SEALs. One of the jobs they did was they would test the security of military bases. So he and his team of SEALs would infiltrate high levels of security bases, not only to get access to intel, but they would also grab the commanders and do light torture tactics on them, like throw them in a shower and do hot cold treatments and stuff. Well, unfortunately, he was a little bit too good at his job, and he really kind of hacked off some big, powerful people that brought the hammer down on him. But he did a phenomenal job at testing security and showing where the holes were, even in our government, and how even a small team could easily infiltrate and get their hands on the commanders, a base commander, or get a hold of intelligence or technology or whatever. So it was a vital role, and that's kind of what Sean's talking about with his consulting business. He's actually done consulting for high level people, and so he's got a lot of experience on teaching them what they have to do to be secure. And yet even though he's worked at that level, he's also willing to help, average people on our level to try to help prepare ourselves just because he cares. All right. Now, everybody has to make a living, so things aren't free, and sometimes people cry about that, or even shows. But the problem is, we all only have so much time in a day, and we all have to try to make a living for ourselves, for our families, for our bills, um, health bills too. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, we're living in tight times for everybody. So don't be off put by that. But if somebody is interested for themselves, their family, or their business to try to, because look, as as we see crime on the rise, or we see inflation on the rise, even, and we know inflation is going through the roof. The dollar right now is in big trouble. And here's a proof of that, absolute proof. Oh, we're going to send $200 billion over to the Ukraine. Oh, we're going to send $100 billion over to Israel. Oh, by the way, we're gonna send another $100 billion to Iran, just to the enemies of Israel. We're gonna fund both sides of that conflict. Yeah, like that makes sense, right? Um, so I'm surprised we're not funding Russia. We're funding the Ukraine. Why not? Anyway, so the accountability, you can't write checks with no end to them. We're borrowing money from China, literally. And China says, if you don't pay us back, we're going to war and we're going to take your country, you know? Um, so and they're buying up all of our infrastructure. China owns 6 of the 8 movie production companies in the United States. You think that's an accident? Why do you think they're all kissing China's butt? Like John Cena, who I've lost all respect for, and I won't watch any movie that man's in, because he tries to say something and stand up like a man and speak the truth. China gets mad at it. Now all of a sudden he's worried about his career. So what does he do? They make him do an entire groveling, crybaby apology to China, where he has to say the whole thing in Chinese. Dude, what? Yeah. That guy lost all my respect for anything.
That's the thing is we can't look to we can't look to movie stars.
Nope.
We can't even look to our own political leaders anymore.
Look at Taylor Swift, who has like a gigantic following, but now she's saying, "Oh, it's okay to be a Christian and do the things that Christianity says that you cannot do." That's wrong. That's not true. And you are not the mouthpiece of Christianity. That's what the Bible's for.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't do that. You can't disagree. You can't give a different message that contradicts the Bible and say it's the Bible's message. It doesn't work that way. And you're not qualified to speak on the topic.
That's why, in the Bible, it talks about we can't serve 2 masters. And we have to be very careful.
Serving, how much money is she making? The Bible also says that money's like one of the roots of all evil. Mm-hmm. There you go. Yep. There you go.
Yeah, that's why I will always look to the amateurs, because they have a lot more to offer, and they're not looking for a platform or a stage to stand on and have people worship them. They want to do right, and they want to show what they have. And
it's the same in media. I will not watch mainstream media because it is all propaganda, it is all control, and is all mostly one-sided. It only gives the illusion of being Fox News, fair and balanced. 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 That's psychology.
Yeah,
that's control.
Every single major media out there, whether they're showing left or they're showing right, you have to understand that they have the main position, which is the narrative that they're trying to drive, which is to separate people, and then you've got what they call the controlled opposition, and that controlled opposition is supposed to draw those who are in the conservative middle class people who are feeling wronged and angered for what's going on because of the other side. And this is all controlled. This is all funded by yours truly, the taxpayer dollars. So that's why when I look to my news, I look to reporters like Dave Bondi, for example, who left the mainstream media and is just more focused on.
I look at independent organizations,
exactly,
and news media outlets. I do not watch mainstream media, and I try to tell all my friends and family not to watch mainstream media. Fox News used to be a conservative agency. It's not anymore. It is not.
It never
And
was, to be honest.
no. Well, I don't know. I think Rupert Murdoch had some good intentions, but his intentions and what it is, he's no longer in charge, and what it is now is completely different than even how it started. So yeah, you could
Unless,
certainly make a case for that, but it's much worse now.
well, that's one thing I know about being a counterintelligence officer in the government, and providing security is this. In order to subdue a nation, you got to build up over time some level of trust on both sides of the fence. And once you're able to do that, then start pitting one against the other. And this is how you create this division in a country like
The
ours.
oldest military strategy is what?
Conquer and divide.
Divide and conquer.
Yep.
And that's what's happening. See, the one thing that we brought up on the last show, and I think it's relevant here, so I'll repeat it. One thing, as far as immigrants coming into our country, one thing that always used to be the case is the immigrants that came here loved America. They loved the idea of freedom. They loved the idealism and the values. So even though we have mixed cultures, races, and backgrounds and ethnicities, we could always come together on the concept of being a patriot
Yep.
and being an American, and that meant something.
Yep.
And that meant we always had common ground that we could always unite with each other on in solidarity. All right.
Yep.
The problem is the powers that be in the government today have destroyed that. So you no longer have the idea of the American ideal. Now they're bringing in communism, socialism, Marxism. Our universities are nothing more than indoctrination camps into communism and socialist Marxism.
And,
And that's
it doesn't stop there. It's even extending it to the elementary schools.
yeah. Universities, high schools, elementary schools. Yeah. Get them while they're young, they say. I mean, they come out and say this, right? Indoctrinate them while they're young, they say.
Yep.
So this is very bad. And even parts of our government now are just coming out hardcore communist, and they're behaving that way, like taking over a one-sided judicial system or one-side Justice Department, where if you're on one side of the fence, you can commit any sin and get away with it. Ask Mr. Hunter Biden, who just walked out of his hearing yesterday because he got upset. Yeah, you try walking out of your hearing and see what happens to you. All right, especially when there's proof.
If I got a speeding ticket and I showed up to court and the judge says, "Well, how do you plead?" "Well, I'm going to plead not guilty." "Okay, well, we're going to set up a trial date," and I just turn around and get up and walk out. What do you think the judge is going to do? It's going to put a warrant out for arrest.
Exactly. You think that's going to fly very well? No, not going to happen. So you got the haves and you got the have-nots, and unfortunately, that line's getting bigger and bigger. And all these people in our country want to be like, "Well, it's about time the white people get what's coming to them," kind of thing. No, you don't understand. We are all together. What happens to us is going to happen to you. There's going to be the elites, and there's going to be everyone else. And if you're not one of the elites, you're in the everyone else group with us. It's not like it's going to be Sons and Roses for y'all and not us. It's going to be all of us. This is fighting for all of us.
Exactly.
If we lose our idea of freedom and independence, then it's over for all American people. Then you're going to have a system of communism or Nazism. They like calling the right Nazis, which couldn't be farther from the truth. But what you're doing is a totalitarian system is what you're wondering. When you say defund the police, what do you think's going to happen? You're talking about creating a totalitarian, a fascist system.
And they're bringing in the illegals, like you were mentioned earlier, to become police officers or become soldiers.
Military.
And pretty soon there won't be any American in any of our first responders.
That reminds me of a story. I heard. There was this man in England. And he said that the government contacted him. He owned a hotel or something like that. And they asked him if they could hire him to buy out his facility to house, not to buy him out, to hire, to use the space for a while for illegal immigrants. And this man, being a good person, was like, "Yeah, I think I'm doing something humanitarian to help people. Okay, yeah, bring him in." So he took the deal. The government said, "Fire your entire staff." Well, now they just lost their jobs. Yet no one cares about local citizens have to pay bills and put food on the table for their children, right? But anyway, so he fires his whole staff. They brought in their own staff, their own security, et cetera, et cetera. Well, after a while, he said he received these documents where first of all, they brought in a whole lot more illegals than they told him they were. It was like 5-10 times more than they said they were.
Yep.
He had lists of names of everyone, and he noticed they all had numbers next to them, and he thought that was a little strange or odd. But later, he said that they started bringing cases to his like storage facility, like for his hotel, and it was boxes and boxes and boxes of stuff, and he was really getting concerned and questioned what are on in all these boxes? What are they for? Why are they here? And typical military fashion, they told him, shut your mouth and mind your own business. That's none of your business. That's for us. And he's like, well, that's not cool. And after a while, it was bugging him. And he says, this is my facility. I'm letting them stay here to try to do something helpful. I don't like the way that they're treating me, that they're speaking to me. And I want to know what's in these boxes because I'm responsible. This is my place. So he went in there and he decided when no one was around, he was going to open those boxes himself and see what was in them.
Yep.
And guess what he found? He found that they were full of automatic machine guns. They were full of bulletproof vests and body armor. They were full of cases of ammunition. And he also found manifest numbers that they were all numbered to the other people staying in the hotel that had their numbers. So they all matched up. All right. He was like, whoa. This man said he had all those boxes picked up and moved off his property. And he says, I don't care what happens to me or what they do to me. I will not be complicit on my conscience of having my people being attacked by these people. So he says, I don't care what the consequences are. And then he put the story out public. Now, I claim the exact same thing is happening across our borders right now. In fact, not only have there been several videos of finding these UN military ID cards, but there's also several videos of strange boxes showing up at different police departments and other places full of guns and ammo. Not to mention, you remember, it's not that long ago, our government purchased enough ammunition and guns to fight 3 Vietnam wars. What's that for?
Yep.
And we're not using that in the Ukraine. It's not going to Israel. It's going here. For what? What do they know that's coming?
Well, not to mention that all the funding that we sent to Ukraine, the weapons as well, they're turning up on the southern border. They're coming in with the illegal immigrants.
Yeah, and the money we sent is being basically laundered.
Yes.
They literally voted that the money could not be audited at all. What does that mean? That just means we're stealing your money. Here's what is happening. They know that our dollar and our economy is getting ready to crash. They're trying to make it happen as fast as possible. They know that before it happens, they're going to try to get as much money out of the system as they can to pad their own selves and their own family. So here's what they do. They make these deals where they're giving absurd amounts of our money, that even borrowing money to do so, to other countries. They're all getting kickbacks from that money. And like you said, some of it's even going to target us through the border, right? They're getting kickbacks on that money. Now, they will take that money and they will go use it before the collapse to buy real infrastructure, real assets like land, and commodities, etc., to buy physical assets with. So now they own these physical assets. Then when a collapse happens, they have all these physical assets and land that they can then have as value and money, no matter once there's a stabilization and a new currency system is established, which will probably be a digital currency. And everything's heading that way now. Even if you listen to them, if you listen to the Fed, if you listen to Biden, if you listen to anything, everything's heading digital. And then, as we know, as Christians, they're going to end up having the mark of the beast that you're going to have in order to be able to buy and sell, to have access to a bank account. And Bill Gates spoke about this technology. I like to call him Bill Hates.
Yeah.
And I like to call it Hillary. But Bill Hates said at the beginning of the COVID thing, he put out information saying, hey, man, we're going to have this cool new technology, and it's going to connect your brain directly to AI. You won't even need a phone anymore. Your brain will be directly connected to AI. So we're using nanotechnology and these implanted things that are going to rewire your brain to basically be a phone system, be a Wi-Fi hotspot. I'm sure that's going to be healthy for the human brain and body, right? Anyway, then Bill Gates said, the AI is going to regulate you with a direct connection. That's also why they need 5G for these connections. And he said that it's going to speak directly to your brain, and it's going to give you instructions on what to do. And he's like, oh, this is going to be so nice and so great and so utopian. Like, he's like, it's going to give you instructions. And if you follow those instructions, you're just going to get free money added to your digital bank account. Well, hold on there. That also implies that if you disobey or disagree with those instructions, you will have digital money removed from your bank account for your food, for your bills, etc., for your health care, for your children. Now, and here's the thing. Yeah, I've already heard other leaders speak about this, or whistleblowers. If you're too much of a bad citizen or speak out too much against the new way of how things are going to be, they just turn your chip off. Well, if they turn it off, now you can't buy or sell. You can't buy food, groceries, or toilet paper. You can't put gas in your car. And the only thing then at that time is you're going to be picked up and taken to a camp, a re-education center, because apparently you need re-education, and you will not ever leave that facility. Plus, they can do anything to you, including giving you whatever they want once you're in that facility. You know what I mean? By the way, everything we've said on this show is just for entertainment purposes only. You know, none of this is true at all. You know, because in America, we can't have free speech anymore. That's a fact. And if you think you have a constitution, you don't. I argue this. If they can invoke anything that can take away your right to a constitution and the protections underneath it, then we don't have one. And all you got to do is look up the Patriot Act 1, 2, and however after. All you got to do is look up the National Defense Authorization Act, especially the new one they just passed, which, by the way, gives the government the right to assassinate citizens at will for any reason. Boom.
And then also, too, you got to look at all the executive orders they have placed out, especially starting with Obama generation. Obama has put out more executive orders than any other standing president.
Especially when he was leaving office. They're like, oh, we got to get all this stuff in and like block control of the income and pundit, like creating another government. You know what I'm saying? Not to mention, have you seen the video where Biden's like, I don't even know what I'm signing. Is this for more ice cream? I mean, really? Come on. Oh, by the way, since I brought that up, has anyone look up the video online where Obama says, I won't even talk about how he's tripped up 4 times calling Michelle Michael. That's not a coincidence. Just ask Joan Rivers. Okay, enough said. Now, but there's a video by Obama where he says, if I could remain in office as a president with a puppet in mind as in the name of the president, and I still run the country secretly, I would. All right. Now, he said that in the video. Now, I'll look at another video that was popular, I think, like this time last year. There was some kind of White House party for Biden. And in that video, Biden's walking around the room like, and not one single person will speak to that man or shake his hand. Yet every single person in that room is clamoring in line to shake the hand of Obama. And at one point, Biden even goes and looks at the curtains on the wall. It's like, oh, look at the pretty curtains. You know, I mean, because no one will talk to him. Then he at another point, he goes up to Obama and starts grabbing on his arm, trying to get his attention. And he's just like, he's ignoring him. Like, go away, old man. I'm doing my job. You know what I mean? So, like, you really think that Biden is running anything? You know? I mean, can't even complete a full sentence. You think that guy's really like, oh, he's the most voted for president in U.S. history? Really? Ha! Yeah. Right. But anyway, I don't want to grandstand too much on that thing. Let's get back to survival in a sense that, I want to paint an overall picture as to why, especially in the time we're living in today, going back to the whole pick your card narrative, right? Um, we've never faced such dangerous times in our country into our way of life and into our values and into the freedom of our country. In fact, a quote I said in our last show was one of my favorite quotes from John F. Kennedy, where he said that there's no point in our country surviving into the future if our values don't survive along with it.
Nope.
And that springs me off to something else I had said that I always like to bring up. Look at the television show The Walking Dead, right? I always tell people when I used to watch that with friends, the zombies aren't the real monsters. The real monsters are the humans and the way that they're treating each other.
Yep.
We see a lot of that going on in our government today, where it's all about control, it's all about dominance, it's all about egoism. It's all about people, the small groups trying to control everybody else and push their own agendas and values on everyone else, right? And so I always tell people, even in the case of like a Walking Dead or some futuristic apocalyptic scenario, there's no point in the human race surviving if our humanity doesn't survive along with it.
Yep.
And that means that we treat each other with a degree of ethical respect, with love, with empathy, that we come together as a people, as Americans,
Mm-hmm.
as a united, as patriots, that stand for the Constitution, that stand for freedom and liberty,
Yep.
but also one that protects its own citizens and its own people. Not saying we don't want other people to come in, we do, but it doesn't take much common sense that you can only handle so much at a time,
Well,
and
it's just
we
like
need
in
to follow
history.
laws.
We can go
Good.
back in history. We can take a really good look when when Ireland had a famine and they started shipping Irish people over here. This is right at the beginning of our Civil War here. They were only allowed to ship so many Irish people over here during a duration of time. Now, um, when the Civil War ended, they started putting a cap on how many people from Ireland they would allow to be able to come into this country. And of course, they would have to get, that's when they started creating a port of entry. This is where they started creating rules and regulations. And this is all set forth so that people can, go through that process. They can vet out, which people are going to be, coming here for the right reasons in a way. They want to
Yeah, it
contribute
used to be
to.
you had to pass tests and exams to get in our country, and you had to offer like skills. You couldn't just be commoner people that offered nothing to the country. And here's the problem with that. That doesn't mean they're bad people. The
No,
problem is they're not contributing to the country, and they just become a weight that weights us down in our resources.
right.
Like just taking health care and not putting anything back into Social Security, or the economy at all.
Yeah, I've got a really good friend that came from Slovakia, and he's going through all of the legal venues and all the legal steps. When he finally did become a U.S. citizen, it was about 20, 25 years after he came into this country. But he went through all the legal steps, and while he was going through all the legal steps, he was paying in the Social Security for that 25 years. Now, once he became a citizen, he went back to see with Social Security office, how many points does he have, into his Social Security, because for 25 years that he was paying into that Social Security, none of that actually applies until he becomes a citizen. And so that was the mistake on his part, was not getting his citizenship much sooner. But that being said, our system isn't perfect, but uh, we the problem is it's not the people, it's not us, The problem is those who are in office. And I've always had
And
this
then
saying,
dividing us.
it's always the people in the blue jeans that built this country.
Yep.
But all it takes is to put the people in suits into Washington, and they'll destroy this country.
Well, that brings up a point. Serving in Washington is a service. It's not something where you should be an opportunity where you and your family and your friends all get mega rich. And the problem is, how many politicians do we have that go in at one moderate value of income or financial wealth to their family, and then after a few years of being in office, now they're like multi-millionaires or above.
Yep.
And how much of that is actual payoffs?
That's a good question.
Certainly a conflict of interest. Or how about laws like it's illegal for you to act in insider trading, but it's okay for members of Congress and their families and friends? Really?
Right.
That only says corruption, corruption, corruption. There's no other reason for that.
And more importantly, it's funny is how we have politicians, especially in the last 40 years, who create the laws for us that apply to us, but it does not apply to them.
For example, healthcare. They pass all this substandard healthcare for the people, but it's not what they're following. Or I love the ones that like the grandstand. Like Obama did a television show interview one time where the interviewer's like, "Well, Mr. Obama, have you ever owned a gun?" And Mr. Obama's like, "Well, no, I've never felt the necessity to own a firearm." Yeah, what's standing behind him is a whole team of security personnel, every one of them carrying an automatic machine gun. Really? Really? Then you're going to preach to me about not carrying a gun? That's like Francis. Pope Francis comes out and says, "Oh, you're not a Christian if you own a gun." Well, apparently, no one in America is a Christian again. The highest gun owners in the world, right? But it's funny, and yet he claims he's a communist socialist too. Which, by the way, 5 popes before him said that you cannot be a Christian and a communist, even a moderate one or socialist, not even a moderate one, and still call yourself a Christian. Yet we have a man now who's calling himself a pope who says he's a professed communist socialist. Imagine that, saying that, professing those values, saying we can't own a gun. Yet that man has a whole army of the Swiss Guard that follow him everywhere he goes. So don't preach to me about owning a gun to protect my family and myself when you have a whole armed detail that follows you everywhere you go. I mean, holy cow. The nerve of some of these people.
And when I worked in the underground dumps, we were outfitted with automatic weapons. And we had the state-of-the-art technology.
That's the security teams, right? The security teams. What about anyone else?
State-of-the-art security, anything and everything you could possibly think of. That's about 20 to 30 years ahead of the mainstream public. We have those type of things. And
Can you talk about any of that?
What's that?
Can you talk about any of those weapons that are far superior than anything we have?
Yeah. So one of the in particular weapons that they have is it's kind of like a truck with a dish on it. I know there was a YouTube video that came out with it for a while there. I don't know if it's still up or not.
But the microwave system.
Yeah. Yeah, and the microwave system is really for deterring a large crowds of people. When you get close to a certain, I want to say it's up there about 50, 60 feet away, you start to feel the heat building up on your skin. It's very painful. And they've done some dry run exercises with soldiers where they had different types of materials to try to see how close they get.
Right.
But we have those. Mainly the United Nations has them, but we have them in the underground dumps as well. And that's for if large crowds of people were to bum rush to trying to get in or whatever.
What about other types of technology or weapons? Did you have rail guns?
Yeah, we had rail guns. We had well, let's see, we have NM134, which is like a Gatling gun. Those are basically outfitted on every single vehicle, every single post.
I mean, did you ever have rail guns?
There are railguns. They have miniature versions of railguns. Then that's pretty much take out vehicles mainly. Not to shoot individuals, but to take out at what we call HVTs, high value targets, that we can't penetrate with our normal 203 rounds or 223s or even our 50 cals can't penetrate. That's where the rail guns come into play. Like somebody's driving an M1A2 Abraham tank into one of those dumps trying to take over the dumps. That's where the rail gun come in, but they have a miniature version of it.
I had a buddy that worked at he did some corporate stuff for the Denver airport I was telling you about. He said they gave them a type of technology. They said it was similar. It looks like a pin, all right, a little
Mhm.
bit thicker, but looks like a pin. And he said that what would happen is if there was, like, say there was a security situation with a guy having a gun or something like that at the airport. He said you could shoot the person with this and it fired. He said a copper, a small copper, a piece of copper, and the copper was heated through the mechanical way it was
Delivery
fired or
system.
whatever, but it would burn through clothing. Like, I mean, it would burn through leather coats, right?
Yeah.
And it was designed that way to hit your skin. And then when it hit your skin, he said he wasn't sure what the technology was, but it would paralyze you. And he said he accidentally fired and hit his leg. He said, man, I was paralyzed and couldn't move. And he was playing around with it and he shot himself with it. But he said that they were quietly on the down low given these devices and for some of their positions in the airport. So I thought that was interesting. That's something that's not revealed to the public.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this. So, you came across some interesting stuff that we've talked about on other shows when you were in these DUMBs, which, again, for the audience, DUMB means deep underground military base. That's what we're referring to. Underground military bases. There's almost 200 of them, if not more, just in the US alone. They're around the world. They're all connected through what's called a maglev train system, tunnel and train
Mhm.
system that goes through these bases and around the world. And they go at super high speeds, can go from one end of the country to the other in no time whatsoever flat. You have to be way a part of very, very, very high level securities to even see the maglev trains or to actually be in one of them. I've talked to several whistleblowers. Many of them have know about them. They might have seen them from a distance, but rarely have I ever heard someone that's ever been inside one or traveled in one. They just didn't have the security clearance for that. Um, that said, many so with those things, I just wanted to ask: did you ever see anything as far as maybe for like secret space program stuff when you were in the dumbs, or have any knowledge about that kind of stuff while you were down there?
So the only secret space type stuff that they have is pretty much the communication systems,
Okay.
with the computer systems.
Yeah.
Um, typically people think that, for example, Cheyenne, uh,
Grand
Mountain,
Mountain,
Wyoming,
Northeast, right
right?
near Washington.
That's run by the United States Air Force, but um, people think that they use some kind of landline or they use radios or whatever. The truth is they don't. They actually use a very high sophisticated type of technology that's I want to say is about 100 years in advance compared to where we are right now. And they can communicate anywhere onto any ship, any personnel. For example, it basically so if you want to, if for example, if I have my ham radio, let's say it's a tactical radio that I have on me, and I've got my earpiece in, and let's say I'm halfway around the world and I'm doing a recon op mission, right? Um, and maybe the ships that are out in the ocean that are the method of how I got there and the method how I'm going to get out. Okay, and that ship gets blown up or something, I have no way out, but I'm an inside man into this particular country, and this is all I've got. Okay, um, that in the Cheyenne Mountain, they can actually reach me using that sophisticated technology that can actually use. It's kind of hard to explain it. The way it works is it works on a wavelength, and it acts as
I've heard
multiple.
of low frequency and scalar.
Yes, and so they can actually I can actually hear them, I can talk to them, and I can communicate with them at any given time, and even more so, they I do know that they outfit clandestine operatives with what do you want to call it, a piece that goes, the eye contacts. They have special contacts that go on your eyes, but it allows them to be able to see what you're seeing. And it doesn't matter where you're at. You can be deep down in the cave systems. You can be in the valley. You can be anywhere in the world.
So
And
it's like a body cam.
yeah, they'll be able to see
It's
everything.
feeding out a live signal.
A live single. Yep. And there's no delay whatsoever within the system. So
That's
we're
awesome. Never heard of that one.
we're not gonna have, we probably won't see this technology in our lifetime in the civilian world, but if we do, it's going to be in the 15-minute cities. But we're going to be the rats. They're going to have the access to all of that stuff. So
Have you people seen the movie Snowpiercer, where everyone's on the train? You've got the elites in the front. You got the low class in the back, which is everybody who's not the elites.
right,
And then you've got the military enforcement class. That's the enforcers, right? So it's 3-class system.
yeah,
And the ones in the back of the train finally figure out that the food they're being given in their food rations every day is nothing more than ground up cockroaches.
yeah.
And yet our own government is saying, we're going to do away with protein and cows, and we're going to make you start eating bugs. Really?
Well,
Then they
I tell you this much. I've been out, in the field. Like for example, in Kosovo, we ran out of MREs,
Yeah,
and so we had to find other alternative food sources quickly.
right.
And I will tell you, yeah, I've ate a few bugs here and there, and I've actually cooked out a piece of bark to get some fiber and stuff. But you don't want to live on that stuff. It's just
Now, an emergency, yeah, you got to do what you got to do. Like, for instance, I brought up before Bear Grylls. I love that guy, and I
yeah,
love his shows. And yeah, one of the things he shows is when you are on the food chain, if you can't find food, you got to go lower on the food chain. And he too would, would often eat bugs for fuel and stuff that when he didn't have any other choice. But when you're trying to do one thing for survival, so you don't die, it's one thing.
right. And
When
then
your government is saying we're gonna intentionally, take away your healthy food and give you imitation crap food that's not going to be the same health or nutrition to your body, then there's a major problem.
well, here's the thing that a lot of people don't realize. I'm going to kind of point this
And
out.
they're not going to be
But
eating that crap.
no, so as we all know, that bugs do get parasites.
Hmm.
And it's and we already and every human being on this planet has some form of parasite in their stomachs already. So John and I were talking to great lengths about this before. But when they start introducing the bug meals to folks like you and I, there's going to be parasites in that, and we're going to have more and more parasites within our gut system, which means is that we're going to get sicker and sicker. And so that's why even
That means you're going to go to big pharma to buy more and more of their drug pushers products.
exactly, and that's all about control, make you sick, and then fill you up with them with medications that have severe adverse reactions, effects to your body. So it's not about curing you; it's about getting you sick and keeping you sick. It's all for profit. So even when I was in the running in special ops, we always made sure that we had enough MREs with us, but we also knew where to source our food if we ran out.
The
Which
problem is MREs are trash that will destroy your body too. No, governments have done studies on that for trying to use them for they're fine for a weekend, but you
right,
can't long term go in health when those things. They're trash.
that's why it's just a lot better as a as a just a civilian. What I this is just kind of what I do, but so instead of going out and buying all these high end fancy MREs that are out there, your best source of food is the food that you buy from, say I buy from a local farmer. He's got his own butchery shop and everything else, right? So I usually go there and I buy, twice a year. I'll spend like a couple grand. I actually get more meat out of it than if I go to a grocery store.
More meat and cheaper. Me and my friends have done the same thing in times
Yeah.
past.
sometimes we'll like, yeah, we've gone there. We'll say, hey, me and another guy, we wanna buy one cow, and I'll pay for half. He pays for half.
That's what
Then
we
we'll
do.
buy like
Yeah.
half a pig and whatever, or even a sheep. I'll buy one whole sheep. But the thing is, I'll bring that meat back home. I'll cut them up the way I want to cut them up. And then what I usually do is I have a crock pot. I'll put all the stuff I want in, the vegetables, the meats, the broth, and everything. And I'll let the crock pot cook all that stuff really nice and slow for a couple, 12 hours or whatever, 8 hours. And once it cools down, then I'll get my ball glass jars out and I'll fill these up. And then just to the bottom line, and then just before you get to the top, this is where I take the bacon grease. I don't throw my bacon grease away, but I'll fill the top of that up with just at least a half an inch of bacon grease, and then I'll can the top up with the lid on, and I do a vacuum seal. So I'm not using a canning process. I'm actually using the vacuum seal to seal this up. And I can stick this in my pantry, and this is going to be good for the next 2 to 3 years. And the reason being is because that bacon fat is going to make sure that none of this, you're not going to get botulism, you're not going to get any viruses or bacteria or even funguses into your food. And that's what the bacon grease is designed for. So, and you can reuse it over and over.
That's the thing. You can my stepfather used to and grandparents, they used to save their grease all the time and reuse it. And that's something, when it comes to I won't get into a bunch of prepping foods right now. I'm gonna save other shows for specifically that topic. But um just since you brought this point up, something people don't think about when they think about food is how fat and how important fats are. It's something that's often neglected. And
Yes.
that's not good. That's a major part of that. But yeah, I'll get into that, and we're gonna do other shows that specifically go into that. And if you want, you're more than welcome to jump on, and if you're free and want to do a show talking like that. I'm gonna start now that this is like a just a general for the audience, just a general overview of why survival is important, why some degree of prepping is important, why
Mhm.
learning some skills are important. And then I'm going to start breaking down into um, other shows that are going to dive into more specific topics like, okay, what about food prep? And what about this prep? And what about that kind of thing? And break down things and kind of digestible things for people. Because a big key for people once they realize, hey, there's a problem, I should pay more attention to this, or I should try to do this for the sake of me and my family. Um, then it's where do I get started? Because it's like learning a new language. It can be so overwhelming
Yep.
that it takes people that have spent years in this already to condense that down to and my whole thing is start with the basics and build a foundation with that. Start somewhere, but start somewhere with the basics. Build a foundation, then
My
you
thing,
can
my
layer it
thing for me
upon
when I first started doing all this is that I have a cardinal rule is whatever you're normally accustomed to eating, just stick with that. Use those things. When you start to go off the track, as far as say for example, like MREs, people went out there and spending, $2,000 to $3,000 for crates of MRE.
or trash food.
The problem with that is that MREs are so loaded with sodium that your body's not accustomed to that, and there's no way to filter a lot of that sodium out before you can eat it. So I always say, make your own food like what you would normally eat, and then learn how to store it properly. That's the best way I could say, shoestring budget wise.
Yeah,
So
shoestring budget wise, right? I
yeah,
came up with my own system for that I'll share in another video just on how to some things just to get started with having a prep supply that you can start with, and then again, like you said, just expand from there.
yeah,
Um, but the whole idea is just learning what the basics are, getting a foundation, getting something rolling, something there, and then you can always learn and expand. So it kind of makes it easier for people that are new to the subject to feel more comfortable about getting into it. And like you said in the beginning, a major point is make this into fun activities for your family. Like I always tell people, one of the best things you can do to prepare for survival or for prepping or both is, man, start going camping with your family. Get your family into camp. First of all, it's great to get away from the world and society
yep,
and get out into nature. My experience with nature is it's healing to the soul. in a way that you just don't have in society. Our
Mhm.
society is so unhealthy to us. But when you're in nature, it really reconnects you to the soul, and it brings you closer to people, it brings you closer to God, which is another key point in all this.
Yeah.
Um, uh, but that said, so bringing the family out there, it's something that a whole family can do on a shoestring budget. Once you have some of the necessary gears that you need, it becomes very cheap to then be able to go multiple times to go on vacations with the family, to go do stuff. And you take those and turn them into learning opportunities, skill building opportunities to make it fun. Like, okay, today we're going to learn how to start fire from scratch, from sticks, or with the ferrocerium rod. You know what I mean? That kind of stuff. So, or different little aspects. How about campfire cooking? I mean, that's a whole skill. How about just learning how to build and maintain fires, and then to cook on them, and what are better pots and pans to use for that you don't have in your house and stuff like that. So that's the idea of it. Another thing I'd say just off the top is there are some pieces of gear that you want to spend some money on,
Mhm.
but a lot of gear you don't need to spend a lot of money, especially just to get started or to build something out. And one of the best ways I think is going to old army surplus shops. Man, they are using gear that has been proven over and over to be effective in the field. And you can get the stuff there at a fraction of the price that you're going to get from like North Face or Offspray or MRS. I mean, all these other big name companies that with this high end gear, right? And it
I found
probably lasts long,
I found a lot of this stuff in garage sales. You know, think about it. We've got baby boomers
especially tools.
who have invested in a lot of the stuff. The majority of the baby boomers out there are hoarders, and they don't throw things away. So go to garage sales. You can get them for like maybe a buck, maybe 10 cents a piece or something. He save you a lot of money.
I follow this guy's channel, and I reached out to him to try to see if I could get him as a guest to come on and talk because I love his show. I'm going to be promoting his show later. Um, Not right now, but this guy, I love him because he's just a simple guy. He's got a show with like 500,000 subscribers right now. And what he does is something I've never seen anyone else really do before. He builds a lot of his own stuff, his bushcraft stuff himself. And his axe, he got his axe and he bought it from a garage sale, like you said. Even
Hmm.
his tools, he bought his tool from a garage sale, so he got it cheap. And then he built out like a saw from whittling wood to make an old time saw that I was so impressed with. I went and bought one that someone else made, but but I went and bought one after his saw. And man, he goes out with a little bitty pack. He made one time he made his own canvas backpack just out of some canvas material, and it was nice. And then he keeps two wool blankets in this, and I'm sure he got those at garage sales too. He keeps two like wool blankets in his pack. He got a tarp he made instead of a tent. He made a tarp. That's what like the frontiers people and Civil War people all did. All right, Civil
Okay.
War soldiers carried shelter halves, something you learn about in the military. If you didn't have a shelter half, I mean, if you didn't have a battle buddy to complete your shelter half to make a teepee tent, you only had one side of it, and you use that as a lean-to, and you build a fire on the other side of it to keep you warm, keep you out of the wind, keep you out of the rain, keep you out of the elements, and you can stay warm even in freezing temperatures if with a little bit of skill knowing what you're doing. Well, that's what this guy does. He built his own backpack. He took a bed sheet and he waxed it, and now that became his lightweight tarp. And he puts that up with his wool blankets underneath, and he takes his axe and he takes his saw and he takes a little bitty cook set. And then he brings a few things from home to make meals with while he's out in the bush. And
Yeah.
he's made several videos of just doing stuff like that. And I love how he shows how he makes his stuff. One show he had recently is he takes his cotton pants and he whacks those so they're water resistant and that they're more durable when he's out in the wild. And you don't have to wash it. You don't wash them. That would destroy them. And it's just amazing how this guy's done all this on the cheap. He even his clothes that he buys them from secondhand thrift stores. So this guy, for very little money, has built a whole survival bushcraft thing. It's amazing, you know? So yeah, I'm really impressed with the way he's done that because one thing I'll be covering in the show is, you want to have some degree of survival gear, and I'm going to be prepping a lot of stuff like that. But I mean, doing gear reviews on a lot of stuff like that. But that said, one big difference between, like we talked about medicine today, it's
Mhm.
not many times it's not designed to cure you. It's designed to hook you on product that you become dependent on, and
Yeah.
it's treating the symptom instead of the disease. So you only get worse and lose your health over time. That's not fixing you. It's actually hurting you. The cure is worse than the disease. So like for example, these statin drugs. I mean, they're so dangerous, and people only get worse on them. I'd rather have a heart attack
Yeah.
than be dependent on those drugs. But anyway, that's my own personal thing. Not giving medical advice. But anyway, but the same thing with this guy. Our gear that stores make today, they use very light and simple fibers to make their gear. The survival gear you go buy at the high end store today, it's not designed to last in the wild. It's
Yeah.
designed for you to go out on the weekends or to go on a hike, but it's not designed to live out of. In any major catastrophe, that stuff's not going to hold up. What
Mhm.
you got to do is look back to what people like during the Civil War had, what people in the frontiers day had. Now they it will be you're going to it's a give and take. You're going to have a little more weight to deal with, but you got something that lasts forever.
Yeah.
So instead of having a fancy nylon tent that even the sun will destroy, if you have a good solid piece of canvas and you take care of it, it will last your life and your grandchildren's lives. You know what I'm saying? That's the difference. Same thing with a pack, same thing with a lot of different. That's the idea. That's where I came up with this philosophy of hardware over software.
Yeah.
Now that's not to say, I have a lot of the high speed new camping gear as well, and I love that stuff. But when it comes to long term survival, that's only going to get you so far. But there are ways that if you have a little bit of skill, do a little bit of effort, a little bit of ingenuity, you can build out a lot of your own gear on the cheap,
Yeah.
like this guy did for having lean-tos, oilcloth lean-tos. This guy even made you can make gum blankets. You know what a gum blanket is?
Yes.
In the Civil War, soldiers were issued gum blankets. And what that is a piece of canvas, and they would take one side of it and they had a rubber kind of cement that good I think Goodyear made or something. They were able to
Yeah.
coat a layer of plastic rubber on one side of this. Now what that did was it makes a perfect ground tarp to where it's creating a vapor barrier between you and the ground. So you can sleep on this and you're not waking up wet, or it's not soaking through, or if it's raining, you have a protection. A lot of times they would cut a hole in the center to where you could now put it on and wear it as a poncho. So now it's rain gear as well. You
Yeah.
see? So things like that. And I mean, that's something that any person can go to a Ace Hardware and learn to make themselves, and everything's right there, including the canvas. I mean,
Well, like one of the things, I'll give you my cheap version of how to waterproof my stuff. But that stuff is called Scott spray that you spray your boots with to keep your boots waterproof.
right.
Those are like $4 a can, right? And usually what I do is I get a couple of cans and I'll take my poncho gear or my ghillie suits or my clothes that I'm going to wear, and I'll just spray those down with the Scott spray. Not only does it waterproof it, but it actually helps keep the body heat, retain the body heat inside of you. I used to use that a lot for my when I used to go out hunting for deer or coyotes or whatever. Um, and the reason why is because you spend like a lot of money for these little bottles just kill off that body odor or whatever. What I just do is I just wash my clothes and normally with non-scented Dawn dish soap or whatever. But then once it's dry, then I just go back and I spray it with Scott spray, and it will last for like a long time. So
That brings up a product I'm going to be doing in one of my gear reviews. This is salt crystal. All right. Um, this hunters used to use this a long time ago because it has no odor, and it basically is a deodorant stick that has no odor. All you do is you pour some water on it to wet it, and then you rub it, and you got to rub it for a few minutes, and you got to do it pretty much twice a day, once in the morning, once in the late afternoon, for it to work. But it holds body odor at bay just from the salt crystal. All right. And what's amazing about that is it would help hunters used it because not only does this have no scent, but it also creates you from not having scent. So for the animals to smell you. So
Right.
it's dual purpose in that. And also, if you cut yourself, it can also act as an aluminium stick, which is basically a salt stick, right? So, amazing thing. I actually went to spend a year working towards my master's degree in Rome, Italy. And when I got there, I found out I'd forgotten of all my stuff to pack. I forgot to pack deodorant. And I was like, crap, what am I going to do? I don't know what kind of deodorant they have in this country. It's not like I can just go pick up a right guard or something. But I had my aluminium stick, right? And here it is. After a year of use, I still have it's still usable. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
This one thing lasted me over a year, and it worked. I had no body odor. And just using this, not to mention, this is a whole lot healthier than all the chemicals in your deodorant sticks. Dude, when you have things like laundry detergent, deodorant sticks, or whatever, and they have like over 200 ingredients you can't even pronounce on them, that's not healthy for your body, people.
No.
Come on. So, so, and same thing with soap. I use natural pine tar soap because it's all natural. It has a musky odor to it, which I love. But when you bathe and wash off with it, there's no odor, no smell at all whatsoever, and it's 100% natural. They used to make it in nature all the time for stuff. But yeah, so that's something I'm gonna do a gear review on, just on this. But since you brought that up, and that's just a little teaser too, because kind of stuff to be talking about with the show. You know what I mean?
Right.
I do.
One of the things I used to do with my kids when my kids were growing up, I always make it at a point that I had to take them out. Not just we go camping, but we did survival excursions where we would take a whole weekend. We'd go deer hunting, and we would go out there. We'd actually wouldn't live out in the woods, 24/7 for the next 2 or 3 days. And so we bring some food with us, but there's food out there, and we just bring the basics, right? And we had no more than 20 pounds worth of gear between me and the kid, and we would go out there for the whole weekend. Now, 2 out of 3 of my kids, they loved it. They just had an absolute blast. They learned a lot. And my son, however, was kind of an opposite end of the story, but he would rather, sit behind a TV screen playing video games all day long,
Yeah,
um,
those kids.
and so I've had to try to find some things that he enjoys, some things that he's more attracted to in the wilderness situations and stuff. So it's all about trying to make it fun. When you
That's
have
it.
kids, just get out there and make it fun.
That's it.
And if you need ideas, whatever, you can always reach out to.
These are family projects you can do together, whether it's growing a garden, whether it's going camping and practicing skills, or
Right,
whether it's even doing a project with the family to build like some of this gear we're talking about from scratch, where it's on the cheap.
exactly.
So that's the whole key. Make it fun, but in the course you're building up what you need, so that way any catastrophe that happens, I mean, it doesn't have to be some kind of apocalyptic event. I mean, where I live in Louisiana, we have LSU, we have hurricanes, right? So we have hurricanes, we have floods, we got tornadoes, we got gators. Hey, in the last flood here, a gator ate someone that a friend of mine knew at their house. So I'm talking about, I mean, craziness, right? High strangeness, but you never know. Our power goes out for months at a time when we have a bad hurricane. So there's always times for emergencies where you need for your family. You're going to need sleeping bags. You're going to need bed rolls. You're going to need blankets. And I always recommend wool, by the way, 80% plus or above, nothing lower. Um, And I recommend the wool for anything and everything you can get it for, from socks to underwear to t-shirts to pants to gloves to hats to anything you can. 80% or above, socks especially, underwear too. It also helps, even coats. It also helps also block in your odor.
Mhm.
If you're trying to live in the woods a long time, there's nothing better than wool. Nothing comes close to what God's created in nature.
Yep.
So it'll outlast anything. It covers your body scent, which is not just important for being around each other, but if you're trying to hunt animals and they smell you, they leave.
Yep.
So that's a major deal if you're trying to put food on the table for you and your family to survive, you know? So, not to mention just being able to have some degree of warmth and protection and stuff that'll last. But yeah, the idea is just making it fun and preparing for the whole family so that you have these things. Should have everyone in your family should have backpacks that are specific to the age where a moderate weight they can carry. Um, and everyone needs to have some degree of rain clothing, insulated clothing, good boots, um, things of this nature, sleeping bags, backpacks, some kind of shelter. Everyone needs this, plus food,
Yeah.
and maybe some books on first aid, on forage and food. A rule of thumb, by the way, on forage and food is you want 3 separate books from different authors to be as a counter reference
Mhm.
to to if you're trying to determine if something is edible or not. That's one of the mistakes Christopher McCandless made.
Yeah.
If he had other reference books, he might have been able to catch the fact that he was making a mistake. And when your life is on the line, you don't want to make a mistake.
Right.
So, but you need to have some degree of that, some degree of some kind of way to canteen cup, something, a way to preserve, filter, and carry water. Absolute necessity. Um, something for kind of medication or first aid kit. These are all necessary things that everyone needs to have. You don't have to be a prepper per se to think about having these things for you, your wife, and your family, and you got to practice them. And if
Yep.
there's skills sets involved, you got to practice them. Starting fires,
Yeah.
campfire cooking. I mean,
Yeah, learn how to build out your kits.
yep,
Whether it was first aid kit, you could build out your own first aid kit for pennies on a dollar. And you can um, you know if you find videos on YouTube, you can see other bushcrafters out there doing certain things. Write that stuff down. Keep a I have a little leather notebook, but I always write stuff down in there. And then I go, okay, well, let's try something this, try this something new or whatever. Me, I'll try it at home first. And then if it works well, okay, then we're going to go out and do a weekend excursion and just try it out there. If it works well out there, then okay, I know it works. And then kind of move on to the next thing. And you can develop your own curriculum book, with this, and you can teach your kids these things. The cool thing is when they get old, they'll never forget how to do these things. It becomes a
right.
part of them.
That's it. Right. Yeah, I guarantee my kids would know how to skin a buck, run a trout line, how to hunt, how to set traps, how to grow gardens, all that. As far as I'm concerned, that stuff's just as important, if not more important, than anything they're going to learn in some kind of state-run education propaganda system called school. In
Yep.
fact, I wouldn't even put my kids in any damn school. I would have them homeschooled or in homeschooling communities that teach the values I want to teach and not the propaganda what the government wants to teach. Just
Yep.
like when Hillary got on online and said, "Oh, you got to stop thinking about your children as your own." Excuse me, what? They're certainly not yours, and they will die before they have your values in this life. So.
Yep.
Um, it's sad that we've come to that time. I wouldn't even put my kids in religious schools. They're teaching the same curriculums now. So, um,
It's all
and
about
if,
this.
and if your churches are teaching that stuff, get away because they're not teaching God stuff. Find ones that teach what the Bible teaches and not make excuses or justifications to go against what the Bible says in black and white, word for word. And by the way, people don't understand this, but in our relatively near future, books are going to become one of the most rarest things on our planet. And I promise you, the Holy Bible is going to become the most rare thing on the planet. You ever seen that movie? Excuse me, Book of Eli?
Yes.
By the way, one of my old buddies, roommates in Hollywood, hangs out with Denzel and works with that company, Alcon. In fact, he and I both we both went up for interviews for a job there, and he and my roommate got the job, and I'm really glad he did because he was a good fit for that, and he's still with him. I never would have stayed there, but he's still there even to this day. But anyway, the Book of Eli is a great movie. I love that movie, and it shows too that they're going. A time's going to come where Christianity, I promise you, is going to be illegal. It's going to be outlawed, and it's going to be a death penalty for you to identify as being Christian. I promise you, this time's coming,
Mhm.
and they're going to destroy every Bible that they can. Hell, they'll probably even rewrite the Bible their own version. That won't be the same. So that's something else you need to stack up in your libraries. Something else too, people don't think about is you start with the basics and you build from there. But one thing I would suggest for people is buy books on entertainment too. Like for example, I try to focus on a collection of the 100 greatest books ever written. I'm talking things like Moby Dick, um, Bram Stoker's Dracula, even the old time classics. That a lot of people call them Brit lit, British literature, right? Um, but the 100 greatest classics of all time, man, those books are timeless,
Yeah.
and the values that are taught in those books are timeless for every generation. And not only that, it's an entire education system in of itself. Not to mention it's entertainment. And we ever come into times where electricity doesn't work anymore, what are you going to do? You need stuff to rest the mind and to be able to have entertainment. That's why I say, and books are great, how to's great, Bible's great, but you're also going to need something for entertainment. Not to mention, as Rollins says, a great famous prepper, um, he says beans, bullets, and band-aids. All right. He says if you're going to prep stuff, beans, bullets, and band-aids, that means you need to store up on foods, you need to store up on weapons and ammunition, you need to store up mainly from raiders trying to kill you, just take your stuff, because
Yep.
that, look at every survival movie, it happens every time, it's going to happen. So Pentagon even has it in its own study, so it's a own war gaming. So I mean, that's what you got to prepare for. And then three band-aids, first aid, medicine, bandages, that kind of stuff. And when it comes to barter items, you know, there's gonna, when there's no money, there's gonna have to be some degree of bartering. The best things to barter are things like food. Money's not gonna work, but things like food, maybe some precious metals, alcohol, um, and medicine, and books. You know, books. People are going to want books. They're going to want, people would be crazy to have a simple thing of entertainment that gives them a little bit of an escape, a little bit of a breather from the horrors that they're facing in the world, and reminds them of what they grew up with or what they were connected to before. That's
Well, especially like children's books. You remember the golden books that we grew up with.
Grimm's fairy
Um,
tale.
yeah, things like that. I have a collection of a lot of the older books. They're the little books. Like Jack and the Beanstalk. Alibaba and the 40 Thieves, and just little books like this. Especially
Oh
there's
yeah, like you read
really
your kids, stories.
yeah.
And it's part of their education system too, on a preschool level kind of thing. Yeah, but see, that's also why we also need books on mathematics, books on
Mhm.
history. Before, I wouldn't buy any modern books on history, but old books on history,
Yeah.
especially U.S. and world history. And remember, all the new modern stuff is all propaganda BS. So throw that crap away. I wouldn't even let my kids read it in any school. But that said, history, how about engineering, how about chemistry, science, those are all books that we're going to need when you're building communities. Those are stuff that are going to be very important. Books on engineering, books on health anatomy,
Yep.
books on mathematics. I mean, those are science. I mean, these are going to be very, very important. I say this: new tech is old tech.
Yeah.
All right, new tech is old tech. So we need to collect the old things because those are the things that are going to have real value. It's
Yeah.
not going to be online stuff. It's not going to be electronics, other than I would say you do want to have radios, you do want to have flashlights. Look, one thing people do not understand about living in the wilderness, if it's not a full moon night, when the lights go out, it's dark. You don't see anything. I mean, it's like, whoa, I can't see my hand. You know what I mean? So you have to have multiple flashlights. You have to have lanterns. You have to have a way to repower them, refill them. Those are things you've got to take into consideration. That's super important because in our modern day, we're so used to having everything just spoon fed or handed to us. Think about it this way: what are you going to do if, for any reason, any catastrophe, whatever, what are you going to do if the power goes out? And that's a very real threat on multiple levels because you got Carl Schwab with the World Economic Forum warning us over and over with his grandstanding, and we know how that goes with
Hmm.
these people telling us we're going to face a cyber attack that knocks out our power for like a year or more. All right, really? Our own Pentagon has done studies saying that 90% of people in our country will die. 90% if our power goes out for any extended length of time. 90%. Our Pentagon also ran war game studies saying that within 2 weeks, 2 weeks, people will be eating other people, their neighbors, for food. That doesn't mean they're raiding their pantries. That means they're cooking humans for food because they can't find it anywhere else.
Yep.
That's our Pentagon and their own wargaming studies and reports. All right. That's frightening. Okay. So you need to think about how would you live without electricity? All right. Also, if we have a nuclear war, that can super ionize our atmosphere and it'll knock out our power grid. One of the biggest, if you want to know what the biggest threat to the United States is, David Adair went before Congress. He's a genius. Went before Congress and told them, if we have a major solar flare that's just right from the sun, and the sun's heat is its intensity is picking up right now, so this is a very real possibility. Or if we have a nuclear war, or just nukes are placed in the atmosphere at the right points and knocks out our power grid, it will destroy the electronics in our country, and it would take years for our country to build power back.
Yep.
And we are very vulnerable to that. So you need to learn about things like Faraday cages. I'll be going into that in more detail in other shows. You need to learn about how to harden your electronic systems. There are some electronics you're going to need, like lighting, like the radios or your comms. Those are two of your most important right there. Third thing I would recommend, I am a big giant component of colloidal silver. You can you can make colloidal silver generators. You need some electricity, but it is a way where you can produce your own natural antibiotics. And I'll go into that in more detail in other shows. And but these are things you need to learn to think about. What happens if electricity goes out? How are you going to get water? Because your pump's not going to work anymore unless you have the old time hand pump. So how are you going to get water? How are you going to filter that water? So these are things that are very important. How do you filter water? I mean, there's several methods. There's improvised methods too. We'll go into all that. So these are all considerations that you have to think about and should make some degree of preparation for. And one of the most key points of survival is location. I've got a lot of friends here that are former military, former law enforcement, like me, and they say, "Oh, John, yeah, I've got so much ammo, I've got so much food. I built a cabin now, in the woods here," and I'm like, "None of that's going to matter. There's no survivability here." I recommend Joe Skousen's book on strategic relocation to understand this principle. If you listen to all the major experts in the world, they all agree on this point. In order for you to survive, you must be in a key location to survive. And what does that entail? That means you want to be in remote areas, remote wilderness areas that have the lowest population densities and the highest number of resources.
Yep.
That's what you've got to focus on. That's the places you've got to be. and we've got a limited time, and it's not easy for people to pack up and move to those locations or to move their families or their children and all this kind of stuff. But I tell you, nothing's going to survive. Nothing's going to matter anything if you stay here and a catastrophe goes down. You won't have time to get out. It's not like the movie we were talking about yesterday, me and Sean, about Red Dawn, which is a great movie and gives you a realistic look at this stuff. But those mountains they fled to were right next to them. You could see them, and that's the only way they were able to get out. If you're in a situation where you're living in a city now, that's impossible, because you're going to have gridlock on the roads. You're going to have panic, confusion. Your car won't even be able to get anywhere because of gridlock. Not to mention, if you can't fill up at gasoline pumps because the electricity's not working or money's not working or your credit card's not working, like we saw just it happen in Florida recently with the hurricane down there, then you're not driving anywhere. So how are you going to get out to these places? You won't. And at that point, you're not going to survive. Not very long. Not before you get overrun by raiders, other people, gangs.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And that's the important thing is, you know, in any key battle position or any conflict position, you want to have high ground. High ground, it dictates everything. So mountains have always been, if you go back and look at, like we were talking about before, John, where there was key people in the biblical times or even in the world history times. And we saw what they, for example, like in communist China or communist Russia. In communist Russia, there was people that were still living in the mountains. And just recently, I think it was like last year, a couple of years ago, I can't remember, but there was a video on this where there was this YouTuber who was trekking through the mountains, and they ran into this family. And this family has been there since the beginning of the communist China or communist Russia, anyway. But they have
revolution.
They, far as they know, that Russia is still under a communist regime, but they've been so disconnected, cut off from the rest of the entire world that nobody even knows that they're even there, and they have no idea what's going on.
America, because of our news media, is still told that communist is a Russian that Russia is a communist regime. It is not. Mm-hmm. If you listen to Putin and you listen to his leaders, they say we have learned from the errors of communism and socialism. We've sworn off communism and socialism. We've re-embraced capitalism, and we've re-embraced Christianity. And they said there is no Russia without God. Without God. That's their government. All right?
Yeah, so, even Putin, back about 4 years ago, Putin even went on a world stage, and he was talking to the host of the show, and he decided to turn his attention to the American citizens, and he says, I need to tell you this right now, American citizens, but you need to go out and buy yourself as many guns and as many bullets as you possibly can. And with that statement right there, this is coming from a Russian president telling the American citizens, you need to go out buy guns. You need to go out buy ammunition.
In that same speech, he said that your media is lying to you in your country.
Yeah,
I listened to it. I heard it.
If that doesn't wake anybody up, I honestly don't know what will, because that is,
not only that, Russia's been saying America's lost its idealism of morality and God, and Russia's saying, You're preaching about being freedom and liberty, but you're becoming communist. Russia's preaching to us about becoming communist because we are.
Yeah.
Like you said, if that doesn't wake you up, nothing will. I have a friend of mine that lived in Albania under communism, and he moved to America with his family to escape communism. And he calls me up and he's like, John, what the heck, man? He's like, I came to America to escape communism. He's like, but I see your government is going into communism. And I told him, I said, listen, Americans don't have a concept of this. I said, you need to make public shows and tell them that your experience of living under communism and how you see the same things, how it happened in your country, are taking place right here in the U.S. so that people wake up and understand and try to stop that before it's too late.
Yep.
You know what happens under communism? They say, We'll have peace if you just turn in all your guns. But then you turn in your guns and then go kill everybody.
See,
That's
that's the
what
thing
happened in
is
Russia.
communism. The first target the communism's going to target is going to be the Second Amendment. You get rid of the Second Amendment, guess what happens? All the other amendments don't matter no more. They just fall out. They just fall away like dominoes, and pretty soon we're not going to have. It's not going to be known as the United States of America. It's going to be something completely different, unrecognizable.
Well, I'm going to tell you what, from what I grew up as a kid, we're almost there now. I tell you, it's not much more. But anyway, so I hope in this video, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. I hope that in this video, we've made a case for why survivalism is important, why prepping is important. And I'm going to be doing more episodes on gear review, talking about different aspects of survivalism and prepping and things like that. And Sean, I'd definitely love you have you come back on sometime to talk, especially about some specific areas and prepping, and also based on your experience and with your books. Again, Sean has written books on survivalism, on home security. He is a professional consultant and has consulted some major players in the game already on a very professional level on these subjects. So for home security and preparation stuff. So contact him. I will have a link below where you can do that. And Sean, I appreciate you for coming on. Audience, I hope you enjoy this. Check out my other channel, The Harbinger Report. By the way, The Harbinger Report is more of a paranormal kind of cryptid type show where I go into kind of more conspiracy theories of crazy things going on in the world, like zombie viruses and giants and all that kind of stuff. However, I claim it's all biblical and it's all biblical prophecy that is coming true. That's why I do it. And I do it in an entertaining way, but I'm trying to get truth out there in an entertaining way. But I also created this show separate from that just to help people, to help anybody. I hope it helps somebody, but to help people to take survivalism skills and prepping a little more serious, where it might be able to help them or their families, or to help build a basic understanding of to build on, and to help them get into that and help people. That's all this is for. That's why I'm doing it. So I hope that the show, what people will be interested in, that they'll sign up and subscribe. I hope that I can do more shows. Also, you can contact me at Braven Bushcraft at yahoo.com. That's Braven Bushcraft at yahoo.com. And if you've got any questions, if you've got any show ideas, if there's things you would like to see, um, or if you're an expert on the field and would like to come on and talk about some specific areas, that's fine. If it gets too conspiracy, I try to keep this show light. My other show is full of drama and stuff with the conspiracy. So if it's too conspiracy, we'll come over to the Harbinger Report and we'll throw it up there, and people will love it. So that show's brand new and it's growing fast. So I've had shows in the past where so I had a lot of fans left over from that I already started in that genre. So that's why I started off with that. But anyway, thank you everybody for coming. Sean, thank you so much for coming on today. And please check out Sean's link and his material. If anyone needs consulting on any of this kind of stuff, or you know someone who does, please try to reach out to him or me. I'll try to put you in touch with him as well. And I hope everybody enjoys the channel and come back to learn more about survival, bushcraft skills, and gear review. So take care, everybody. God bless. And keep the lights on.
Thank you, John Bell.
Thank you, sir.